Did she say what kind of animal it was that attacked her?
So yeah, they're saying it's some type of animal attack. Statistically, there's been more animal attacks, mysterious deaths, people gone missing.
In other news, local authorities remain perplexed by the animal attacks.
What attacked you in the woods?
An animal. What else could it have been?
Welcome to It Was an Animal Attack, home of the supernatural drama series. I'm Sandile.
And I'm Fadzai.
And we're back in the new year, this year of our Lord, 2025. How are we feeling, Fadzai?
In general, feeling like 2024 finished way too quickly.
Oh, really? I thought it dragged.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you had more to do than me. Maybe all your dreams came true last year.
Yeah, sure. That's what 2024 did for me. Made my dreams come true.
No, someone finally explained to me why sometimes it feels like... Because there was this person saying, oh, you know when you were a kid and you looked back and it felt like years were so long, and now that you're older, it feels like a year is a relatively short period in time. He was just like, yeah, it's because relative to how long you've been alive, a year is no longer that big. And I was like, oh! Mm-hmm. And you know what? It works out perfectly, because the first year that I felt wasn't a very long stretch of time where a bunch of stuff happened was the year that I turned 10.
Yeah. When a year was no longer a tenth of your life.
Yes. For our new standards, I won't be saying what year that was, because now, as you know,
we're years old, as you know.
No, I turned 10 in 1874, 10 years after the vampires in my hometown were rounded up.
In colonial Williamsburg.
I mean, after the Union sympathizers were shot in a church? Is that
right?
The official story? What a wild history that town has.
It's crazy.
And then they still have a parade to celebrate it.
Every single year.
The mundane normie history is that, yeah, we shot a bunch of civilian Union sympathizers in a church, but let's parade and dress up in Confederate clothes.
Because that was a necessary evil for the protection of our town.
Wild Mystic Falls. How are you feeling?
There's some light on the horizon. 2024 was not as fruitful as I'd hoped, but I'm feeling a bit... I mean, world-wise, I am terrified. On a micro level, I'm feeling good about 2025. I have some irons in the fire that I can't speak about yet, but I'm very excited. We'll see in a month how much I can...
That sounded almost alchemical.
And maybe it did, but I've said too much. I'm feeling very fired up for this year, so yeah, let's see how it goes. Mm-hmm.
And how are we feeling about Care Bear?
Ooh, Miss Caroline, sweet Caroline. We have returned, of course, for her because our holiday break split her episode in half, bless her heart. But season 5, which is what we're jumping back into, it varies so wildly because I feel it is one of her more involved seasons, but at the same time, it is the season I have the most to say critically about her narrative.
Okay.
But, that goes with this being the worst season of the show, so that kind of tracks.
Yeah. I was speaking to yesterday after our social event, who was speaking to their friend and saying that, no, the show, this being a friend who listens to the podcast but has never watched the show and has no intention to watch the show. But,
I'm familiar, yes.
But was like, no, the show does eventually get better again in the later seasons. And I was like, well, in places. For certain characters.
In places. I think it swings mercifully up in season 6, and then, it's a bit of a sine curve, and then another crash. But, it's never as bad as it is right now, is all I'll say.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're on a plane and it lands and you think, well, that was a bit of a rough touchdown for someone who does this for a living. That's my generous read on season 8. I'm like, we made it, but wow, that was I didn't like how we landed.
Yeah, I fully expect some of the landing gear has broken even a little bit. Yeah, I hear that. Well, leave rough landings. We're going into this broken plane. Season 5, and our girls are going to college, of course.
The Terminator's playing in my head.
You know she's coming back. You know she's a mainstay. Miss Kyoko is here. I say our girls, 2 of them are going to college. One of them is entirely dead. So that's neither here nor there. Elena and Caroline move into their dorms at Whitmore College, and there is a tearful goodbye with Sheriff Forbes, who is struggling to let her daughter go and, start living her adult life.
Last parent standing.
Last parent
Liz.
standing, Miss Liz Forbes. Good for you, girl. And then, of course, there's all the drama concerning our icon, Hayley Kiyoko, aka Megan King. I'm going to say go back to the Elena episode for that, because all that stuff is not super relevant to Caroline outside of Caroline at some point going through people's personal belongings.
When you see one of your friends doing something bad and you're like, girl, I love you, but this ain't it.
What are you up to? Bit nosy. But Caroline has also set everything up for Tyler to apply to Whitmore College. But he is apparently off in Tennessee at the moment helping a wolf pack with wolf stuff, I guess.
Will we ever see it? Do we know who these wolves are?
Do we ever see it? Have we ever seen it?
Nope. Could be a lie for all we know. Tyler's always off with some wolves that don't matter. The only one we ever meet, I guess, is Hayley and maybe Chris?
Right.
In season 4.
And I think there's an Aiden. No, I'm thinking of Aiden from the originals.
Yeah.
Never mind. Truly off the back of season 4, which ended with them, actually free to be together, but we don't see them get back together. There's a lot of energy of, well, who actually cares about that? So,
which, in the shadow of Elena and Damon's Summer of Love,
right.
Just a slap in the face for me as a Tyraline fan.
Yeah. And that will come up later again, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Elena starts pushing Caroline towards this guy, Jesse, who invites them to a party. And when Caroline says, I'm with Tyler, Elena's like, are you? Because he hasn't called and hasn't really shown any interest in coming here, which is like, we're not even gonna entertain the idea of a long distance relationship. Not every couple goes to college together, but okay.
We know Whitmore College is about as far away as Stelli's. It's not that deep.
They're constantly driving back and forth for fun. So I think for a relationship, that's doable. They got money.
And super speed. She could run back to Mystic Falls if she wanted.
Seems like a non-issue, but alas. They have that whole period where they're trying to spy on West Maxfield because when their roommate Megan dies at the party from a very clear vampire attack, that's being covered up. I think his signature is on the cause of death notice, so they're like, suspicious. But he clocks them in the classroom and is like, you have to leave. You are first years. This is the third year class. So, there's also a scene where Damon barges into their dorm room and Caroline is fresh out of the shower and she says, Damon, towel, knock. And Damon says, Caroline, no one cares, no. So, just throwing that out there. I'm convinced the writers of this season didn't watch any of the previous ones.
It's giving when you raise a very fair point and everyone else is like, it's not that deep, and tries to gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting.
It's not that deep. They being Caroline and Damon, have to then go find Elena at a bonfire party because she's been psychically hijacked by Silas, the villain of the current arc. Damon attacks that same Jesse guy because he was talking to his girl, I guess. So Caroline has to take care of him. This is when they start vibing. And they almost kiss, but she's like, I have a boyfriend. And then Jesse starts telling her, hey, your relationship is doomed. You just don't see it yet, which is wild.
Whomst are you, Jesse?
Knowing it was nothing about Caroline. It's not his fault. He is being spoken through by the narrative. So, I don't blame him that much, but crazy.
It's always these men with the green eyes.
You can't trust them. What are they doing? Don't trust a single thing they say. So Caroline then dips for an episode, and when she comes back... Oh, actually... I believe she's been calling up Tyler, trying to, get him to come to the college, and he's not been answering. But, that's. Then she disappears for an episode, and when she comes back, they found Stefan, who, if you don't know, has been drowning for 3 months in a quarry in Mystic Falls, has now had his psyche burned through by Katsia, a 2,000-year-old witch, to get to his doppelganger, Silas, and he now effectively has retrograde amnesia. Caroline has spent some time studying up on amnesia in order to help.
Because of course she has.
Because of course she has.
Type A
That's
Caroline.
Caroline is also hanging out more with Jessie now. She's like, it's a study date because she is taking on like a medical module to spy on Wes Maxfield. I don't know how that works school-wise. She's a drama major. But I'm not asking questions.
Just going across faculties. It's fine.
They're like, your prerequisites are all over the place. I don't know if we can let you do this.
But I'm sure Caroline got good like STEM marks in high school, so she could probably apply to something like that.
But yeah, she says it's a study date. It's very clearly a date. They then kiss, which, you know, good for them. Later, amnesiac Stefan comes by the party, and this is the first time that he and Caroline have seen each other in months. Again, no memories. He's like, Caroline Forbes, my best friend, because he's been apparently studying up on all his connections and family and stuff. And he says that Caroline is much hotter in person. And when she's like, oh, okay, he's like, I am a little drunk, don't mind me. So that was like interesting.
No.
Are you okay? You doing all right there?
I'm perfectly fine.
Okay. Unfortunately, he does have zero control over his bloodlust right now because he's basically a newbie vampire. So he goes after Jessie at some point because he's upset from like Elena and Damon nonsense. Caroline has to tear him off Jessie and tell him, hey, you may not remember, but you're not this person. And so Stefan comes down from his high and says, I've got to go, and runs away. Caroline then feeds Jessie her blood and starts apologizing to his unconscious form because she's like, this wasn't how things are supposed to go or whatever. So yeah. The next day is Bonnie's funeral because they just found out she's dead. So they go to that in the Mystic Falls Cemetery. And there's a fruition here in a conversation that she has with Stefan about Tyler being sort of MIA. And she also lists Bonnie being dead. And she says she had assumed that they would always be around. And now she has to move on without them. So we are playing in this energy of like transition, to make a pun of it. Transition from high school to uni, transition to a new town, transition into adulthood, and how sometimes when you're in transition, the chips fall where they do, and you're separated from a number of loved ones, a lot of familiar touchstones, that sort of thing. So it makes sense in that respect that the story that's being told with Caroline is like, oh, and Tyler's now absent, and it's like, your high school sweetheart, are they necessarily going to be your romantic pairing as you grow up into adulthood? You know, that is an interesting story beat. But then Tyler comes to the funeral at the end of that episode, so, you know.
Yeah, also a little weird to have that following, you know, 2 seasons of Klaus being this shadow over their relationship. And the conclusion always being, we're both immortal. We'll find a way back to each other. We have all of eternity to be together because we're soulmates. And now it's like, yeah, grow up and get over your high school romance, I guess. We're moving on with life. It was never that serious.
Yeah, it may also be partially to do with that reset. We discussed this in the Elena episode that season 3 to season 4, the ending and beginning really feels like they were considering ending it with season 3, whether that have been a story choice or that they might have been getting cancelled after that, or at least didn't know they were getting greenlit. And then season 4 sort of kicks into a new gear. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, just the trajectory for a lot of the characters in season 4 feels a little weird at times. Like, we've discussed how Elena is suddenly perfectly comfortable with her vampirism as she goes into college. Like, it's so fine now. And maybe they want you to believe that's because, well, she's with Damon now and he's fixed everything. And I'm like, wasn't he the problem in season 2?
What has been fixed? She started dating the problem. I don't know. Anyways, in that conversation with amnesiac Stefan says to Caroline, because she's like, well, I thought I would have them and now I have to move on without them. And he's like, hey, you've still got me. I might not remember you, but I know that you were there for me not only last night when I started to go off the rails, but as I've been told, you've always been there for me. So the least I can do is return the favor. And so she's like, okay, yeah,
what a
nice.
Beautiful, perfectly platonic friendship between these two characters. I'm thoroughly enjoying the devotion that these two companions have.
listeners, this is the episode in which a historic battle foretold since the dawn of time is about to take place. So brace yourselves. But Tyler's back now, because Tyler comes back for Bonnie's funeral, and he sticks around it with Caroline. So, of course, Caroline and Tyler immediately jump into the sack. Despite everything, you cannot keep these two down.
And I love that for them. You know what? Somebody who matches your freak.
All I can think about is Nosferatu now since we just watched it. Any mention of the word freak draws me to
Oh
it.
gosh, fine. Somebody whose libido complements your own.
I think that's worse. I think we're gonna stick with freak.
Because I mean, maybe it's because Caroline was still a newbie vamp struggling with all her feelings, and then was broken up with Matt for a large part of that. With all these heightened sensations. But I feel like she and Matt were not getting it on nearly as regularly as her and Tyler.
Not nearly as much. I mean, because Matt's human, right? So it's like Matt is horny a normal amount of time. And at a normal
A teenage
frequency.
boy, please.
A teenage boy with a 5 to 9 job.
Shame, actually,
I don't know his hours.
I can't imagine he's tired. Also, he works out and plays football. Yeah.
You know, where does he find the time? But yeah, no, these two supernatural teenagers now leaving teenage, it makes sense, yeah. Caroline afterwards tells him that there is a Whitmore event. As we know, the Whitmore events have replaced the Mystic Falls events because we can never not have events in the show. And she wants him to go dressed up as Bonnie and Clyde for the dance. Tyler is like slightly scornful of this idea, which on paper, looking at Tyler, right, you would expect him to be a guy who is resistant to the idea of dressing up and going to events and stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing about Tyler is he has never once missed an opportunity, not only to go to a dance with Caroline, he has literally snuck back into town while the original hybrid Klaus had a hit out on him just to have a prom dance with her, right?
Yeah.
But also to dress up for an event, period. There's that Halloween bash he throws in season 1 where he's dressed in a Spartan outfit.
Oh, yes.
Which,
Who
like,
could
is
forget?
so long before him and Caroline get together romantically. So it's like, this is a bit odd.
He
but
was
all
trying.
right.
He was doing that to show off his abs. That was single Tyler, right?
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, he's never been opposed to dressing up because there is, at the very least, as you say, a means to an end for it. So I don't know. They do go to the dance dressed up as Bonnie and Clyde. And then Tyler sees Stefan also there and he's just dressed in like a white t-shirt and a leather jacket. And Tyler's like, I thought you got him a costume because that's what Caroline told him earlier. Even Stefan's going. And Caroline's like, yeah, he's James Dean.
It works.
It works. She's like, the man lost all his memories, just leave him be. Okay, we're going easy on him. Later, while they're dancing, she asks Tyler if he wants to get out of here. And she says the costumes she got for them came with handcuffs.
You know. Yes, because they did it this
Girl.
morning. It's now nighttime. There's been several hours. I understand.
It's the same day.
Go have fun.
And she's like, and now we do it freaky style.
Frankly, with Caroline and Tyler, I would assume twice a day is the bare minimum. So honestly,
Suddenly very warm in my living room. Okay.
they're two supernaturals with super strength and regenerative healing factors.
It's
I mean,
true.
yeah.
If they could float, they'd be Interview with the Vampire style in midair, getting freaky, and good for them. But later they have a more serious conversation where Tyler makes clear he can't do the college thing, not after everything that has happened. Everything that has happened being his mother being murdered and all his friends being murdered and being on the run from Klaus for several months.
To the point of all his friends being murdered. I'm sure Caroline's like, who and who?
We're all here, so I don't know who you're talking about.
She's like, oh, you mean Bonnie? No, it's fine. I'm also sad about Bonnie dying.
So Tyler also adds, not when the reason they can even be together is that Klaus Michelson allowed them to be together, gave them permission to be.
Which I'm like,
Yeah.
I understand, Tyler. I understand. But also, don't look a gift horse in the mouth sometimes. Klaus has moved on from this town. He's no longer beefing with teenagers. Just take the win.
Well, he's beefing with a younger teenager all the way over in New Orleans, but I digress.
Okay, he's no longer beefing with teenagers over like who's gonna get to date this 18-year-old that he has a crush on.
That's true. And you know what? I guess a win.
Yeah.
Caroline's like, okay, so it's about Klaus. And Tyler's like, no, it's about me. I can't live like that. So I have to go destroy that man's life like he destroyed mine when he killed my mother and all my friends. And Caroline says, for someone who hates Klaus, you sure sound a lot like him. And then leaves. Which I think is a bit crazy. But
yeah, that's kind of harsh. I guess in the sense that when Klaus swears vengeance upon someone, he lets it consume his every waking thought.
For sure. But Klaus often swears vengeance on people he was chasing after unprovoked. So I don't think these are comparable. I don't think that's comparable.
Catherine Pierce.
But that's just
how
me.
dare you hang yourself and turn yourself into a vampire to get away from me?
How dare you escape me sacrificing you, you bitch. I don't know if that's quite what's happening here. Finally, in her dorm room at the end of the night, she tells Tyler, listen, I can't just sit here waiting for you to come back. Which she has had to do several times. Again, that's because of Klaus, but that's what's happened. Tyler says he doesn't want that either. And so she says, then just stay. Be the love of my life. Love me more than you hate Klaus. And Tyler says he's sorry. He can't do that. He starts leaving, and she tells him if he takes one more step, it's no more chances, no more excuses. They are done. And the way they frame this shot is Tyler's facing the door, and he's got his back to Caroline. So she's seeing the back of his head, and we're seeing his face when they cut to him, and he is like almost sobbing. And walks out of the room. And that's the end of Tyroline.
Well, I mean, officially, that is the time of death. There's a second death. There's a super hell, if you will.
A super hell. A subterranean layer to the hell we're already in. On its way.
But yes, that is officially the end of one of my favorite ships in the show.
I've really come to appreciate them on second, third, however many watch, that like they are really good in the period that they are allowed to be together.
I'm glad. You know, maybe in a different medium than like TV, like, you know, in books where characters don't have to be written out when there's not a lot for them to do, they would have survived. But, you know, TV series, CW, I understand that already Tyler was a character who was often being shuffled off to do other things off screen. And maybe they decided that whatever they had in mind for Caroline or other characters required Tyler to be gone. Or at least to not be in a relationship with her.
Yeah, I think also, I understand that there's only so much space on the page, but I think also what you do when that space runs out makes very clear which characters are cared about and which aren't. I mean, it's true. Last session we spoke about, or at least I asserted that, like, very often it's clear that the story cares very little about Tyler beyond what he can provide as an archetype.
Yeah.
And it cares a lot about Damon than a lot of other characters, and therefore a lot about Delena in these later seasons, that it eats up a lot of the screen time, where we could be doing interesting stuff with other characters, but choose not to. And that may be because Damon is so popular and Delena is so popular. So in a way, it's like, I guess we've got to feed the flame. It's a shame.
Given the void that Nina leaves behind when she departs,
Right.
do you think that perhaps if they had known she wanted to leave, they would have maybe been a bit more caring with the characters they do have, like Tyler, at this point in the story?
I don't think so, because post her exit, they do bring Tyler back briefly for one episode as a supplement to a Damon storyline and nothing to do with Tyler himself or anything he's got going on. So I think if they did care about him and his vibe, that's when he would have become prominent again. And he doesn't become that. He comes for one episode in season 7 and then one episode in season 8 where he dies. So I think the show doesn't care about werewolves is also an issue as an archetype beyond one season, and thereafter what they add to the hybrid vibe of it all, which all has to do with Klaus, a character who again skyrocketed in terms of popularity. So Tyler just gets screwed over from multiple ends.
Yeah, maybe with this vendetta vendetta against Klaus that he has, they should have just transferred him into the originals, where it's fine, he can be an antagonist. There is a whole wolf faction and all sorts of stuff going on in that show. Maybe he would have been better suited to that show, especially because that show is a lot more interested in the lore and culture of its werewolves.
I think you said that in the Tyler episode, and I was like, I think that could be a vibe if Tyler fit into the like tapestry of New Orleans a bit better, which I don't know if he does. I think in the episode where he guests, because when he steps out of this room with Caroline, he goes and steps into a guest starring role in an episode of season 1 of the originals, and he feels a little bit out of place, I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
Yeah,
I guess,
from what I remember.
I guess because he's being presented as an enemy to Haley and Klaus, who are dealing with bigger and badder threats at the time.
Yeah. But it's like, I guess you can write him to then build connections with some people in that story, but as presented when he arrives, his only connections there are Klaus, who is his enemy, and Haley, who is also his enemy because she sold him and all his friends out and is the reason they all got killed. So, you know, it's tough. I don't know where you put him. He would either be an antagonist for a significant amount of time until he is then made to turn to join the main characters, and that I wouldn't be happy with because it suggests that Tyler needs to put his shit aside, his childish bullshit, and focus on real problems, which I am always, you know, averse to because unlike the story, I don't want to treat Tyler's strife as though it is minimal.
Yeah.
It's kind of screwed what happens to him.
Yeah, I guess the issue is that show, Klaus is always going to be the protagonist.
Yeah.
And after what he did to Tyler, there's no way.
Yeah. But hey, that's Tyler's business. That has nothing to do with Caroline, who we are moving forward with beyond this relationship.
Newly single, ready to mingle, in college.
College gal, having fun. We do enter a fun era where she and Catherine are kikiing. Caroline is freshly broken up and is, of course, in need of a project. Catherine is freshly human and in need of food and accommodation. So the two of them get into some shenanigans. And I thought it was an interesting loop for them from where they started because, of course, Catherine is the one who turned Caroline into a vampire, physically, blood notwithstanding. And honestly, I prefer to remove Damon from that equation entirely. And right now, Caroline is much stronger and more put together than her maker. For all intents and purposes, which is an interesting shift of their dynamic. Also, Nadia's here now, so Caroline and her have some catty interactions because Nadia's just bitchy like that. It's iconic, frankly.
She is her mother's child.
She is indeed her mother's child. And if you're looking for it, you can see it and it's lovely. Also, Bonnie comes back to the physical world when they do that spell to make her the anchor to the other side. So they have a cute reunion. That's very lovely. Also, Jesse's been missing for a couple episodes. So Caroline has been leaving messages on his phone. When he finally calls back, he is terrified and begging for help. When Caroline gets to his room, she sees that he has been turned into a vampire. We know from previous scenes, Wes Maxfield killed Jesse while he had Caroline's blood in his system and then started experimenting on and torturing him. Once again, we see Caroline be very good at initiating a newbie vampire. She runs him quickly through like feeding, how to heal people.
Is this her only progeny, like in the entire show?
I mean, I'm trying to think of how often she feeds people blood. She does feed people blood to heal them.
Yeah.
They just aren't often plot relevant and die. You know? There's one other very important progeny that she has.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Elena also helps with compulsion. It's all very cute. They're having a very like happy, we're vampires and we can actually live functionally. I think Jesse says something about like, so now I'm a vampire. And Elena's like, you say that like it's a bad thing. And then opens a little stash of blood bags and it's like, oh, we're having fun. Hope that lasts.
Let's remember this moment, Elena.
They then all go to a party. This is the episode where Elena mentions she sent Damon to go question Wes about why he was experimenting on Jesse. And Caroline's like, okay, you know he's gonna kill that guy, right? And not because he has any particular care or righteous fury on behalf of Jesse, who he's personally attacked before, like the first time he laid eyes on him. He's gonna kill that guy because that's what Damon does. And Elena's like, listen, I know you don't like Damon or the fact that we're dating. And it's like, girl, I can't deal. with how often the story is like, Caroline just doesn't like him. She doesn't get, why they work.
Watching the show in real time, I was willing to tolerate all these moments because I thought that Caroline was just being the voice of the Stelena argument. But knowing that Delena is endgame, I'm like, oh, so she was just this whiny background naysayer in the writer's minds.
Naysaying friend, right, exactly. Who must then eat the humble pie later onwards, is the thing. So, yeah. Anyways, Caroline and Jesse dance at the party. It's all very hot and intimate because they're both vampires now. So, senses are heightened. Then when they kiss, Jesse bites her on the clavicle or the neck. This girl cannot escape men who are supernaturally compelled to bite her.
If she had a penny for every time that's happened, she'd have 2 pennies, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Heinz Doofenshmirtz, you'll always be famous. He runs off, she tries to find him, but it's Elena who catches up to him in a hallway at Whitmore where he's feeding on Damon, because Wes Maxfield's experiment was to make a vampire who feeds on other vampires, which is why Jesse is now biting vampires. Caroline comes down the hallway just as Elena stakes Jesse with a piece of broken door, and she screams, "No!" She runs to hold Jesse, and he desiccates as she's saying, "Stay with me, please." She then looks up at Elena and is like, "Girl, what?" And Elena's like, "Girl, what? He was after my man." Caroline's like, "Oh, we don't snap heads no more." Which, as you've said, Fadzai, I guess since season 4, they really don't. Everyone goes straight for the kill.
I mean, Vicky as well. Staked immediately.
Yeah.
Stefan didn't even try.
Yeah, but at least there's a meta explanation for that, which is they hadn't been snapping vampire necks as yet. It hadn't been introduced as a thing you could do in the story.
Yeah.
This one, it's just like, yeah, damn, we just killed him. Elena tries to apologize, and Caroline's like, well, the Elena I used to know would have given Jesse a chance. Which is like, ooh, Elena, what is this relationship doing to you? And ultimately, it turns out nothing. She's okay like this. Later, Caroline has to take this back, which, like that moment in season 4 where she had to take something back that she said, is wild. Because she's correct. But she does then tell Elena, when are you going to figure out the outside world is not nearly as dangerous as the person you bring into your own bedroom? Elena's like, wow, tell me how you really feel. Because apparently since shacking up with Damon, she's absorbed some of that won't take an ounce of criticism energy from him. Caroline says, the day I don't tell you how I really feel is the day we stop being best friends. And I hope that day never comes. So that was very nice.
Real Caroline. Because honestly, we've discussed the show retconning the events of season 1. Fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But given everything else Damon has done, I'm like, I don't think I would have stuck around you this
He
long.
still sucks. I would have given... This is around the time I personally gave up on Elena, so Caroline's stronger than me.
And you're all vampires, so it's like, if this is your end game and we have to be friends for all eternity, I don't know if I can...
I'll see you in 10 years for the reunion, girl. It's okay. You don't have to be friends with everyone you were friends with in high school,
You know?
Anyway, more Caroline and Catherine shenanigans follow after this. Caroline comes over to Chez Salvatore to help Stefan with his PTSD following his 3 months of drowning. She is attempting to do exposure therapy, I believe. She goes and gets the safe that he was locked in while he was drowning and says, we're gonna lock you in the safe again, but in the safety of your own home. She's reading from this medical textbook that she's got about the process. All this medical stuff will never come up for her again, which is a bit, now that I think about it, crazy. Because of course, she always wanted to be a journalist. She ends up going into journalism. In the season 5 era, she's doing a lot of medical stuff and seems very good at it. So I'm kind of curious why they never stuck with it for a storyline where she's like, actually, maybe I want to go into medicine. I guess because they maybe already knew they wanted Elena to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, Elena, the writer who decided to become a doctor.
Because we've shifted the focus from her mom to her dad now, because men need a win. I don't know.
Yeah, Caroline could have been like a good psychologist. I don't know how they would have fitted such scenes into the story, but...
She starts psychotherapizing all her friends. She already does that. I think it fits. I think it works. No, we can't have 2 women in STEM. Catherine comes by because she's just hanging out now. And her opening question is, have you two ever, and Caroline for a while is not understanding what she's meaning or like maybe willfully trying to ignore what she's saying. She starts deflecting the question, which is funny. And then while she and Catherine are arguing back and forth, Stefan is inside the safe locked and freaking out. So Catherine is then like, screw peer-reviewed medical knowledge. I'm 500 years old and I know this man better than anyone. He is far more likely to come to the rescue for someone else than for himself. So I'ma hop into the safe also. I'll be in danger and then he'll be forced to get in control. Simple A to B. So they do that. Later, Caroline finally opens the safe and she's like, oh, it got so quiet in there, I was worried. And what she doesn't know is that the two of them inside the safe had started to kiss at the tail end of Stefan's like PTSD freakout, which is not how you help somebody with PTSD. But
Catherine's been watching rom-coms from the 2000s.
Catherine was watching Teen Wolf where Lydia kisses
Oh,
Styles
no!
to keep him from having a panic attack. I guess.
She was watching Teen Wolf and she was like, is that Mayor Lockwood? And the other Mayor Lockwood?
Are those the Mayors Lockwood? Good for them. Is that jogger that Logan Fell fed from? Oh, I should know that actually. I wasn't in town. Shh. Is that Connor Jordan?
And also, is that Emily Bennett? My handmaiden.
Oh, she has a medical degree now. Good for her. She's a guidance counselor. Winning. Caroline very excitedly hugs Stefan and she's like, see, you made it out alive. You did it. And then later, Stefan and Catherine are gone and Caroline's like in the living room and she's shouting for someone to help her move the safe out again, but nobody answers. So then she gets on the phone and she's leaving a message for Elena. And then she starts to hear Stefan and Catherine getting hot and heavy in a different room. Still on the phone, leaving a voicemail. She's like, oh my God, call me as soon as you get this. So I thought that was funny.
The cheerleader in her jumped out.
You know? Already halfway through the season, that's crazy. After this is 500 Years of Solitude. This is where Catherine is dying, everyone's drinking, we know the deal. While they are all toasting to the awful stuff that Kathy did, and some stuff she didn't do that she was just tangentially connected to, but whatever. Elena's like, she tried to kill me at least twice. And Caroline then says, she did kill me. Although weirdly, I'm better off. Because, as we always say, she is thriving as a vampire. More so than anyone else. Damon then reveals to everyone that Stefan and Catherine slept together. Because, you know, why not? And Caroline then looks to Elena and is like, oh, I was supposed to tell you, but you were kidnapped, soz. And then later, when they are trying to find Matt, because Nadia has buried him in that safe.
Oh,
that's
yes.
still here. At the Salvatore property.
Chekhov's safe.
We set up, we pay off. Caroline then finds out that Jeremy and Bonnie have slept together. And she's like, oh my God, I've been with this since season 2, as you remember. I was your original shipper. And she's like, does Elena know? And they're like, obviously not. And so Caroline's like, ooh, scandalous sex, even better. And then she says, God, how am I the only person in the world not having scandalous sex right now?
Oh.
Enter Klaus Michelson.
Apollo with the gift of prophecy.
And I think I told you yesterday, Fadzai, when we were out, that there's a point in my notes where it starts getting really dense and really shouty. And we've reached that point. Damon apparently notified Klaus that Catherine was dying, so here he is. Caroline, for her part, is like, and here you are to gloat, because you're literally the same person you've always been, spin-off be damned. And she's like, I don't need your shit right now. My friend has literally been buried alive, so I'm gonna go deal with that. Klaus, of course, brings up that she and Tyler have broken up because that is the only thing he cares about.
How he heard about this, I don't know. Checked her Facebook status, changed from it's complicated to single, I guess.
All of which he is stalking, of course. But no, at this point, Tyler has attacked him in the spin-off, so he is, like, entombed in a corpse garden right now in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
That's the like order of events that's happening.
He's actually in that show for a handful of episodes, Tyler. I'd forgotten.
Well, not actively. He shows up in the one episode, and then I think he's either entombed at the end of that or the following episode, and then just for a couple of episodes, we know he is in the corpse garden.
And then he pops back out to cause some sort of nonsense. You know, because the thing about that show is it had a lot of like opposing factions and shifting alliances.
Yes.
So maybe even as an antagonist, Tyler could have found someone to stand with for like a season or two.
Yeah, honestly. When do they... No, that's season 2. That's the thing. When the like werewolves start becoming like recurring characters, that's season 2. Where they're like individual werewolves with like motivations.
Yeah.
So she tells Klaus she gave Tyler a choice between her and his stupid revenge fantasy, and he chose wrong, which, you know, all right. At several points, she tries to vamp rush away from Klaus, but he keeps coming after her.
She's like, I literally just whooshed to get away from you.
She does say that. I literally whooshed at the sight of you. He finally says, were I to abandon my revenge against Katerina, would you offer me the same choice as Tyler? Which...
Wild.
I'm fascinated by the framing that Klaus's obsession with hunting down Catherine is the singular thing that's been keeping this from happening. I guess it is a singular thing, but it's meant to represent like the larger character defect that Caroline has always clocked Klaus for.
Wild to think he'd even be offered the same choice as Tyler. I'm like, you're not,
Right, 'cause it's
nor
like...
have you ever been her boyfriend or the love of her life. That's like me showing up at someone's place of work and being like, hey, you offered this guy a promotion. Are you going to offer me one too? And it's like, you don't work here. Why would we offer you a promotion?
You don't work here. You've never had a job at our company. Security? But also, like, now that he's choosing to ignore Catherine, who's already dying, it means he has grown away from his monstrous ways, and now there's no reason for Caroline to refuse him, right? That's what we're saying here.
Mind you, this man is fresh off of entombing Tyler and beefing with other teenagers, as you pointed out.
Which nobody's ever gonna tell Caroline, right? So he doesn't do that for free. He says, I will leave without gloating over Catherine's death if you give me a confession. And she's like, what? He says, after this, he's leaving and never coming back. And she'll never have to look him in the eyes and cover their connection with hostility and revulsion. Never have to loathe the darkest parts of herself that care for him in spite of all he's done. He will be gone and she will be free.
Which I guess means the insane writers possessing her to make her do these things and feel this way will finally leave her alone.
We'll finally be done with this goddamn storyline.
Because
if we get it out of the way now.
This never made sense. We've said as ad nauseum, it's never made sense. Darker parts of yourself. In fact, it's also kind of wild that the person who was the best, like most well-adjusted at vampirism, the person who thrived as a vampire, who didn't really have many dark parts of herself to grapple with once she got her little crash course from Stefan and stopped wanting to eat Matt. All of a sudden, she's the one who can't resist the dark allure of Klaus, the original hybrid, the baddest man there ever was. And it's like, huh? Why?
Why is that? What does she like about him? Please explain to me, like I'm a child, why she is interested in him. And don't tell me he's hot. You've made it very clear he is hot within the text. She's not throwing herself at every hot man in the story. She used to back in season 1. But she's grown so beyond that. So why does she like this guy? Because it's Klaus. Okay. And I have thoughts about the darker side thing later onwards to add on to what you said, but I fully agree with that.
Speaking of hot guys, this is the same Caroline who, in her human era, had known Tyler Lockwood for years. But at a party where they were both like, yeah, we're drunk and horny, let's go find different people to make out with. Because I'm not interested in you, Tyler. I don't like you because of whatever's on the inside, hot as Michael Trevino might be. So the idea that Klaus's looks would be enough to make a more mature, more world-weary Caroline just get weak in the knees ridiculous. So we have to believe this is some sort of intellectual thing. And I'm like, okay, what about who Klaus is as a person draws her in? Because now Klaus's lines, at least, maybe the narrative is trying to say he's being a bit overboard, but it kind of feels like the narrative is speaking the truth through him. Klaus's lines seem to indicate that, yeah, all the back and forth and the barbs and the jabs and all the
pretense,
the catty things she said, it's just a veneer you're putting over the very clear, deep connection that we have. You like me. You're a grade 1 boy pulling on a girl's pigtails because you don't know how else to express your interest.
Secretly you like her and you don't know how to. It's like, what? The thing as well is that this is happening side by side with Delena's first proper outing as a couple, which Caroline has been so vocally against because she fundamentally does not think Damon's good for Elena because he sucks so much as a person. So to then at the same time be suggesting that she's so uncontrollably drawn to Klaus is either insane from a narrative standpoint or makes Caroline an incredible hypocrite.
I think maybe that's what they're going for. It's that, oh, you want to judge Elena for being bold enough to go for the bad boy, when deep down, you like an even worse man. You're projecting, Caroline. That's why you don't like Damon.
Hate that.
Because you wish you could go for the bad guy that you like.
Hate all of that. Actually, keep it away from me. So Caroline says she's in college, she's building a life for herself, she has plans and a future, none of which involve Klaus. And she then says he's right about everything he said. And if he promises that he's leaving, then she'll be honest about what she wants. And he says, I promise. And so then she steps forward and kisses him, and they bang in the woods.
No, I refuse. That's not what happened. Actually, guys, what I'm Wanda in WandaVision going, no, and editing over the reality I've made. What actually happened was she walked away and went back to watch Catherine die.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
And you know what's funny? It's that all of this was because of the people who shipped Caroline with Klaus. And even they don't really get what they want. They get one quickie in the woods and then he leaves forever.
And that's it. These characters never get together.
So no one's happy.
They're not a relationship. They're not in love. Klaus might be in love with her. Even that baffles me because how much time have you actually spent with this girl? But okay, you're 1,000. Who knows how your brain works? He's off in his spin-off and he comes back to town for this to happen and then he's gone again. It's like, who are we pleasing?
And even
this?
Even Klaus's interest in her was always, second place to whatever else he had going on in Mystic Falls. She was never the reason he was there.
And in fact, at any given point, she became an inconvenience to his greater plans. He would then threaten to kill her in order to get back to his shit. So it's like match made in heaven.
And of course, me as a Caroline fan, or Forward, as they're officially called, to see this happen, I was like, oh, so that's why you had to end her relationship with Tyler, so that she could get with Klaus and not be a cheater for this one quickie.
Because that's the thing, right? That's ultimately what it is. And that, again, is going to come up later when we talk about how we position Caroline in the narrative as this very thing happens and how it plays out, how there is fallout to this choice. Oof. As to, the way we're telling this story seems very intent on having Caroline come out of it looking as good as possible, which I feel is a disservice to the character.
And honestly, if they wanted her to look as good as possible, I don't know why they were trying to put her together with the villain. It is just so wild.
Objectively, worst person in history.
Just a monstrous character, and we're supposed to... how many other shows just put a villain with one of the protagonists without redeeming them? Because Klaus continues to be evil throughout this little courtship that's happening. And I'm like, why are we supposed to be rooting for this?
I said this in the last session where I was like, there is a trope of immortal character who, just by definition of what they are, has done monstrous things in life and is desensitized to humanity, who then falls in love with this relatively normal mortal person, and it makes them think about, life, humanity, immortality, and, what other things that matter. And it can be done well. It simply is not in the story. Castlevania does that very well with Dracula and Miss Tepesh. What is her first name again?
Lisa
they French her,
Tepesh.
so I don't remember
Lisa
her name.
Tepesh, who
Tepesh.
also, he never hurts or abuses. Klaus
Right.
infects Caroline with werewolf venom twice.
So that's always ultimately going to be the thing where it's like you haven't set up the story in the way that makes a story of this nature good. Because you never question in Castlevania for that brief 1 or 2 episodes where Lisa is alive that Dracula unquestioningly and unassailably loves that woman and would do anything for her and would never let her come to harm. And she herself is her own person within that relationship and has a lot of cool shit going on and changes his mind about the way he sees the world. And you don't have any of that in this because this isn't a relationship. This isn't anything. When you boil it down to its barest parts.
It's just two hot actors whose characters are therefore hot by extension. So let's just...
Because it's the CW. And I'm getting upset over nothing, so...
There's an episode of the TV series Monk.
Oh, wow.
I think it got revived at some stage in the 2010s. It was originally like an early 2000s show. He has a different assistant in the 2010s than he did in the 2000s. But one episode, the old assistant comes back for like a guest appearance. And the new assistant is one who is more willing to bend to Mr. Monk's eccentricities, whereas the older one was like more of a no-nonsense, like, no, I'm gonna push you to do the quote-unquote normal thing because I don't have time for this. And, you know, both their methods would sometimes work in different ways, but in the episode in which they are both there, there's a scene in which Mr. Monk, who is terrified of elevators, doesn't want to take the elevator. He wants to just go up the stairs. And his old assistant is like, no, we're going to take the elevator, obviously. And his new assistant is like, oh, no, Mr. Monk doesn't take the elevator. He only takes the stairs. And the other one says, no, I make him take the elevator. It's good for him. No. Anyway, they're supposed to be going to the 9th floor, and these two women are going back and forth arguing, no, the stairs, the elevator, the stairs, the elevator. Eventually, Mr. Monk loses his cool and is like, okay, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk up 18 flights of stairs to the 18th floor, then we're going to take the elevator down to the 9th floor. That way, everyone's miserable. and that's how I feel about this writing decision. It's like, okay, you know what? We're going to break up Tyler and Caroline, and then we're going to have her hook up with Klaus, who will then immediately leave to go to the spin-off show and will never end up with her. That way, everyone's miserable.
You know what they say? The sign of a good compromise is everyone comes away from it a little bit unhappy. Later, Tyler comes back because his revenge fantasy failed, I guess. Like I said, Klaus has him entombed in a corpse garden in New Orleans. I think. Go back and confirm that for yourself. I might be wrong. I don't know. Then Rebecca busts him out and brings him back to Mystic Falls because she likes Matt, I guess. Always at the whims of these originals, this kid. Next, we see Caroline. She is cleaning the fireplace in her dorm room because she's in a shame spiral, I guess. There's a phone call between her and Stefan where he's trying to find out why Elena isn't returning Damon's phone calls. At this point, Catherine has passengered into Elena's body. Don't worry about it. Caroline's like, yeah, I'd love to help if I thought Damon was actually good for her, but I don't. Which, again, it's like, how did we go from the ending of that last episode immediately into this? And almost as if manifesting the conflict that's happening here, Stefan says, how would you like to be judged solely based on who you're attracted to? So I guess you're right, Fadzai. That is what they're trying to do.
You know what's funny? Unintentionally, I'm going to assume it's unintentional. The gay subtext is back from season 3 with her dad. How would you like to be judged just because of who you're attracted to, Caroline?
Clearly, you're not an ally to the people. Doom, 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 doom. No freedom till we equal. Damn right, I support it. I can't lose it this soon. Okay, immediately panicking. Caroline's like, why? Do you know something? And he's like, should I know something? And then they both agree that Elena is good for Damon because she makes him happy. And if he's happy, then less people die. And you've said this before, Fadzai. What a borderline abusive relationship all these people are trapped in with this man.
Truly.
They then go off to try and help Damon get Elena back because they're like broken up at this point. Damon's baffled by Caroline offering to assist and says she once told him calling him Satan would be an insult to Satan. Real.
Foreshadowing? Because Arcadia.
Foreshadowing. Which I guess we were wrong, right? Because Arcadius is far worse than Damon could ever be. So he's actually all right.
I mean, what does Arcadius do except judge people a little harshly by his own weird metric?
And then grab their souls and put them into a fiery hell forever and ever, amen.
At least he doesn't pretend to be good.
I'll give him that. I'll give him that. He is honest. He's an honest tyrant. Again, this scene, as most scenes on Caroline's opinion of Damon, is a little bit framed like she's the problem. But whatever. Later, at a party, Caroline finally finds Catherine Lena, who has been pretty successfully ghosting everybody. Caroline then tries to vent to her, and Catherine is trying her best to escape the situation. But love that era.
Catherine being like, hectic. Anyway.
That sucks. I've got to find Jeremy. And they're like, Jeremy's not at this party. What do you mean? Caroline does finally tell her that she shagged Klaus in the woods. And she says she swears she didn't plan to do it. And now she feels awful. So she needs Elena to tell her what an awful person she is. Catherine, and I'm not sure if this is an Elena put on or like a genuine thing she would only ever say in disguise. Catherine says, actually, you're one of the least awful people I know. So, that's something.
She'd been getting Elena lessons at that point. So, could go either way, really. I think she's definitely always liked Caroline, like, the most of Elena's friends.
Outside of Matt, obviously.
Well, yeah, outside of Matt, who she's like, if I only had the time. When she's getting her Elena lessons, she asks a compelled Matt, who does Elena love more, Caroline or Bonnie? And she's like, please say Caroline. And then Matt's like, she loves them both equally. And Catherine looks mildly disappointed.
Because she also doesn't like Bonnie, because Bonnie kind of screwed her over in season 4. That's funny. Then Catherine sees Tyler come down the stairs at this party. And again, Catherine, who is actively trying to get away from the Mystic Falls gang, at least for now, she's like, so tell me, how was it? At least compared to Tyler.
I love how in this era she's been like, I don't want to be dragged into this CW teen drama soapy nonsense. Right. But as soon as the opportunity presents itself for her to be the instigator of chaos, she's like, well, when in Rome.
Well, I'm going to cause some trouble. Like, come on. And Caroline's like, no, what? Shut up. What are we talking about? And it's like, oh my God. And Catherine is like, well, now that you've slept with Klaus, I mean, how was it? And then she looks straight at Tyler and goes, oh my God. Tyler, who has, of course, heard everything with his super vampire hearing. Tyler, who then looks at Caroline with like pure disbelief and hurt and leaves the room. Later, Caroline goes to find Tyler and he tells her to leave. And she's like, let me explain. Tyler then says, actually, let me explain. That man, speaking of Klaus, has killed thousands of people, including but not limited to Elena's aunt, my entire hybrid pack, and my mother. Caroline says, I know, and I'm so sorry. And Tyler says, no, I walked out last time. Now it's your turn. Go. Caroline refuses to leave. Tyler says, don't take another step as she's trying to move closer to him. She keeps trying to get closer to him. And then finally, Tyler brings out his hybrid face and says, leave, while he's flashing his fangs and his like multicolor eyes. Stefan then runs in and throws him against the wall and says, you're drunk. What's the matter with you? Tyler's like, oh, you didn't know? And then points at Caroline and says, she screwed Klaus. Stefan looks back at Caroline, and Caroline at this point is tearing up and leaves the room. And Tyler's like, exactly. Which, kind of funny when you think about it. So Stefan then turns back and punches Tyler across the face and says, drunk or not, Caroline doesn't deserve that. Which, at the time, because we've discussed this in the Tyler episode, because we discussed this from Tyler's perspective.
Yeah.
I had not watched this scene back, and I, in my ambiguous memory, had this sense of like, perhaps slut-shaminess to what Tyler had said. This is fairly neutral, looking back. I don't think there's an energy of this where I look at it as an outside viewer and be like, Jesus Christ, Tyler, how could you say something like that? He said a factual thing about a thing that happened, you know?
Yeah.
Not to like defend a man in the situation, which I am never here for, but I am struggling to find what Tyler needs to be punched across the face for, in my opinion.
We're sowing the seeds again of Stefan coming to Caroline's defense, you know?
Well, Stefan would do that regardless of if he's Caroline's friend or if he's Caroline's romantic pursuit. It's like, why do we feel that Tyler deserves that? Because the issue broadly with this scenario is, as you said, right? Tyler and Caroline are broken up. It's not that Caroline cheated or something. Even though we are in that window post-breakup where some people feel weird about, like, you know, broaching the topic of other people. These people are broken up. So Caroline can sleep with whoever she wants. It's that she slept with the guy who killed his mother and all his friends. I keep saying it and I feel insane now. That's the issue that's being raised. So it's like, what is untrue here? Or what is uncharitable that was said in the scene? I guess is my question.
I guess if one wanted to take Caroline's side, or maybe Stefan's fist's side.
I'm trying to.
I mean, I certainly don't feel like it because, you know, Caroline, it's not your fault. The writers possessed you and made you do crazy things.
No, but we can look at this, because I want to treat Caroline as a three-dimensional realized character, even though she is not very often. So let's take this as though Caroline has done this and we are engaging with this.
Okay, if I were a defense attorney who, you know, a public defender hired to defend Caroline, I would say that, yes, Tyler stated a factual thing, but he knew that that probably wasn't something that she wanted Stefan to know or anyone else to know. Like, he is now airing her sexual history to someone that she did not consent to him airing it to.
Okay.
That's the most generous read I can give on it.
That's fair. Is Tyler beholden to those social mores given how he has been directly harmed by this?
No, which is what I was going to say. I was going to say this is a 18 to 19-year-old whose mother was murdered a few months ago by a tyrant who has just been terrorizing him for the better part of a year. A tyrant who ended his life
right
at the start of his own senior
year. Because Klaus killed him.
And then enslaved him. And then waged war against him for daring to emancipate himself and other slaves.
You know? So I'm struggling to see how he's at fault, at least at this point.
And like, as much as it doesn't need to be about their relationship, it is also like, well, yeah, we ended things because I explained to you how I felt about this monster in my life. And you are a person who I trusted and who cared for me and who several times when we were together assured me you felt nothing for this man. So to then find out that I guess none of that was
guess
true.
You were into him the whole time. You versus the guy she told you not to worry about.
I would also be feeling pretty betrayed. I'd be like, wow, so you knew how I felt about this man and all the pain he'd caused me. And after claiming that you felt nothing for him, as soon as we broke up, you slept with my mother's killer.
Yeah. The thing is, I hate that the story has put Caroline in this position, right? By choosing to have this thing with Klaus take place. But then also following that, I chafe against the pains that the story is taking to absolve Caroline entirely of a choice that she made. You know? It feels disingenuous and it feels infantilizing of Caroline. It's weird. I don't know. She doesn't deserve that. It's like, okay. I don't know. At the end of the episode, Caroline and Stefan have that conversation where she asks him to tell her she's a horrible person. And he's like, listen, you didn't judge me about hooking up with Catherine, so what kind of friend would I be if I judged you? And he then starts jokingly berating her for being a horrible person and shallow and thoughtless. And he's like, I have no idea what Klaus even saw in you. And then the two of them start laughing, which, you know, that's very cute.
Which, you know, Stefan not judging her in kind makes sense. I'm like, yeah, Catherine is a monster who murdered Caroline and served her up on a platter to Klaus. But I'm like, but to expect Tyler to have that kind of empathy for what she's done is kind of unfair.
I have Stefan thoughts on this that I will save maybe for his episode of why I feel differently about the Stefan Catherine thing than I do about the Caroline Klaus thing.
Okay.
And we discussed it a little bit in the Catherine episode, but I don't think we got into it in detail. But sorry, you were saying.
No, that was all I was gonna say. I understand Stefan being like, who am I to judge? He without sin cast the first stone. But Tyler, I'm like, no. Because we haven't had a Christmas episode yet, so I believe Mayor Lockwood has been dead for less than a year.
Oh, honey. So there's a bitter ball at Whitmore the next episode. It's like a broken heart situation.
It's for me, because I'm bitter that this is how Caroline and Tyler possibly have like the worst breakup of any pairing in the show. If you count this Klaus thing as the death knell, the final nail in the coffin, pissing on the grave of their relationship.
Is it worse than the Stefan Elena breakup?
Stefan was just like, I can't do this anymore. You know, I know you love me, but the fact that you also love Damon, it's been a long time coming. I'm letting go.
Right. And then Elena immediately was like, I know. And then that was it. That was the sum total of their breakup. And then the immediate next episode she gets with Damon, his brother.
There's a sire bond in play. So...
Well, yes. And then after that's broken, it's like, well, actually everything that happened was real and correct. So we're moving forward with it. So...
I mean, Damon didn't kill Stefan's mother and then sleep with Elena.
That's true. Did kill his best friend.
That's true. Gosh, Damon. As much as I judge Klaus for the long list of people he's killed,
Yeah. You're in the circle. Klaus is just some guy. You're here, Damon. You're people's friends and loved ones.
Killed Lexi, killed Vicky. And the story, as we've said, like similarly with Caroline, will always treat the people who hold that against him as if, oh, you're just bitter and you can't get over yourself. Matt also hates Damon forever. And it's like, oh, Matt.
Right.
You just don't like vampires and you never liked Damon.
Small fry nonsense. In that 500 Years of Solitude says it's Catherine's fault that his sister's dead. And it's like, oh, well, I guess we're not even pretending anymore.
Wild.
At this bitter ball, Caroline is shredding photos of her and Tyler. And also that stupid horse drawing that she got from Klaus. So I guess equal opportunity, right?
Why did she still have that? Isn't that from season 3?
That's from season 3. Wow. That's from, at this point, a year ago.
Tyler even saw it the night she got it and was like, why did you keep that? Or like the next day or something. And she was like, I don't know. I'm like, why did you not crumple it up right there and there?
I guess because she was covering their connection with revulsion and hostility. And actually, she was really interested in him. That's the story.
Like I said, everyone's miserable because the Klaus ship is dead. The Tyler ship is dead. The ships crashed into each other and all the passengers drowned.
The ship crashed into the iceberg of Caroline. Oh, but I guess that suggests there's deeper stuff going on within. No, I take it back. Cut it, editor. Cut at this point. Thank you. She's also using this bitterball thing to try and get Elena to process her breakup with Damon because she's clocked that it seems like she's entangling with Stefan now. But again, this is Catherine, which she's unaware of. So, you know. She also tries to fish with Stefan on what his intentions are. But he's like, listen, don't worry. I'm still trying to pawn Elena on Damon so that he's happy. So we're still good. Damon and Enzo, yeah, Enzo's here. They then go on some villain shit trying to kill Wes Maxfield, who then turns Damon into a vampire-eating vampire like he did with Jesse. So the MFG has to go find them. Caroline tries to stop Stefan from making it his fault that Damon's choices had consequences, which, good luck, girl. Elena comes downstairs and Caroline's like, oh, I didn't know you were here. And Elena's like, yeah, Stefan's been helping me study. And Caroline's like, oh, Stefan who doesn't go to college. Cool. And then Tyler calls. And Caroline's like, oh, I haven't spoken to him since the incident. And Stefan says the incident being when he almost killed you. Which is simply not true, but okay. I guess that's what we're saying now. Show.
No! I mean, he flashed his hybrid fangs at her, but I think that was more like a, I've asked you to leave and you're ignoring me. Go away.
You've not accepted that. Go away.
Not, I'm going to bite you with hybrid venom and kill you.
And that'll continue to be an issue.
It's giving a sliding timeline where it's decades of comic book history and people are getting a bit confused over what other writers have written. I think I brought this up before, like long ago, but there was a Runaways comic years ago in which the lesbian character Carolina
Queen
puts the moves on her bestie Nico, and Nico's like, oh wait, hold up, I'm not into girls. This will years later prove to be untrue. Nico is canonically bi, but at the time she's like,
I was gonna say I'm aware.
she's like, no, you tried to kiss me, emphasis on tried, you tried to kiss me, I'm not into that, and that's that. However, a volume later, the comics will treat it as if, oh yeah, Carolina's kissed Nico before, and I was like, wait? No, that's not what happened.
Where is the research?
This feels similar to that. It's like, I don't know which writer wrote that scene and then didn't tell whoever was writing this scene, but Tyler did not try to kill Caroline.
And it's like, I can excuse the bit with Damon where he comes in and is like, no, I'm not going to knock when I come into your dorm room and you might be naked, and not think it's incredibly messed up given what Damon has done, because you maybe haven't seen 3 seasons ago when the assault happened. But to look at an episode from 2 episodes ago, no, not 2, from last episode, and be like, yeah, when he tried to kill her because he flashed his fangs. I don't know what's happening.
Mind you, Stefan flashed his fangs at Jenna one time to try and scare her away when he was holding back Eva Lorick. But
it's true.
Apparently,
so I guess he tried to kill Jenna.
That's attempted murder.
So, anyways, on Tyler's end, he has been trying to prove to Matt that Nadia is compelling him, which is this whole side storyline happening at this moment. And now Matt has disappeared. So Tyler's checking in to see if Caroline's seen him. And she's like, oh, I'll come right over. Tyler's like, no, that's not why I called. I just wanted to know if you've seen Matt. And she's like, no, it's cool. We can figure this out together. And then she cuts the call. So that's where we are. Before she leaves, she tells Stefan, hey, Elena is up to something here, and I don't want you tangled in Delena mess, so just keep your eyes open, all right? She goes over to Tyler's house. It is very awkward as they're sitting there, just the two of them. I think he's brought her coffee or something. But because it's Caroline and Tyler, there's also some cute banter, so that's kind of fun. Then Matt and Nadia come over, and Nadia tries to gaslight everyone into thinking she and Matt are just together now, even though she's been actively caught compelling Matt at some point. I love Nadia. She's crazy. There's a fun line where Matt's like, hey, we're having fun. And Caroline's like, oh, fun. Just like the time she buried you alive. Woo, pop open the champagne. Which I thought was brilliant. Nadia then, with a fairly good gambit, is like, don't step to our business, Miss Caroline, when we all know your romantic choices have been a little problematic lately. I heard about Klaus. I heard about your little encounter in the woods.
Calling it romantic feels like a stretch, but whatever.
That's me editorializing.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact thing Nadia said, but that's the vibe of it. Nadia looks to Tyler and is like, isn't that right? And Tyler's like, I don't want to be a part of this. And he goes into another room. Caroline follows him into another room and says, don't listen to her. She's just trying to get under our skin. Tyler's like, look, Matt went off with Rebecca on a Euro trip after she tried to run him off the road. This might actually track for him. I'm no longer unconvinced. So Caroline's like, you're not actually buying this. And Tyler says, easier to buy than some other stuff that's happened lately.
And
So, you know.
That shut her up. Caroline has nothing to say.
Caroline. I do want to stress that at several points, this is one of the moments, and they happen quite a bit between this point and the end of the season, where Tyler is very clearly trying to take some space for himself in this awkwardness they've got going on, and she follows after him to enter that space he's trying to build. And I just feel like that's so...
You know what's really sad? It's a very depressing, dark echo of how he begged her to leave early when he was first turning into a wolf and she refused to go.
Yeah.
It tracks. Except now it's like, no, Caroline, you really do need to give him his space right now.
You really need to leave him by himself. Oh, man.
I love the idea of Tyler, poking his head into the writer's room and being like, well, actually, Matt and Nadia being a thing is more believable than Caroline.
Oh, my God. I guess they leave because later Matt, who is actually in trouble, sends that help K message to Caroline. Just so comical in retrospect. And so Caroline comes rushing back to the Lockwood mansion. Nadia still trying to act like nothing's wrong. Then Matt comes by and Caroline's like, weird text. And Matt's like, what text? I didn't text you. And it's like immediately over. Shame, Nadia was trying her best. Really, this is all Catherine's fault, but that's neither here nor there. Caroline tries to fight Nadia, but Nadia's 500. But then the story stops caring that she's 500 because Tyler comes in and takes her on and is like, young hybrid trumps old vampire every time. And it's like, every time? Okay, so Nadia runs out.
I mean, she does manage to throw him off her. I guess it's just that he only needs to get one good nip in.
Yeah, which
And
he did. Later, Tyler apologizes for how he acted at the party, which I think is a little wild. But
the story definitely starts to paint him as if he's in the wrong. As soon as Stefan said, when he tried to kill you,
right,
we should have known it was all downhill. It's like, oh no,
it's
Tyler
over.
is the bad guy for expecting his ex, who was his friend before and clearly still cares about him, to not bang his mother's killer in the woods. His former slave master as well.
His former slave master, let's be clear. Especially because the energy of this episode is Caroline is trying to get them to the point of friendship again, is why she's here, and she keeps like coming after him. To that point, Caroline is like, it's okay, we can get past this and we can be good again. And Tyler's like, I said I was sorry, I didn't say I was past this. Caroline then says, that's okay, Rome wasn't built in a day. And Tyler says, you slept with the guy who killed my mom. What do you think is a fair amount of time to get past that? A day? A week? Caroline's like taken aback and she's like, okay, you've made your point. And he says, I'm not trying to be a I just need you to understand that the idea of us being good again, not gonna happen. Caroline says, understood. And then leaves.
Alexa, play We Can't Be Friends by Ariana Grande.
We are not in a good place. At the end of the episode, we do see her and Stefan at the Salvatore house, which is a thing that's been happening increasingly this season. I started to notice is that the two of them are always finding each other in the resolution of the episode, whether there needs to be like a debrief of the events that are happening or they need like to, be in each other's confidence. I thought that was noteworthy.
Oh. I'm thinking of that meme, which is like, he did it again, didn't he?
No, don't you dare. Don't bring that shit here. This house is hallowed and clean. Do not enter with that filth. She tells him about Nadia compelling Matt. He tells her about Elena kissing him at the motel while they were looking for Damon. And together, they figure out that actually it's Catherine and she's been passengered in. Next episode, Caroline catches up Tyler, Matt, Bonnie, and Jeremy. And they're like, oh God, how did we miss this? And they're like, well, she's been playing Elena surprisingly well. We know she's had lessons. There's a lot of group work in this one episode, so there's no like huge Caroline moments except the, not climax, but the pre-climax of the episode where they actually kill Catherine, where she gets to say, goodbye, Catherine, as a loop to the... What was it? The Masquerade episode back in season 2. At the end of the episode, she and Tyler are sitting on Damon's car for whatever reason, which, by all means. And she asks him if it's wrong that she feels sad, even though Catherine was a horrible person. Tyler's like, yeah, but you see the good in people. And Caroline says, you mean Klaus? Tyler then stands up from the car and says, your words, not mine. Okay.
That's the denouement?
No, there's more. Caroline then says, your hybrid bite just killed someone, and nobody bats an eye.
What? Oh, yeah.
I sleep with the wrong guy weeks ago, and I don't hear the end of it. How does that work? And then Tyler says, I don't know, maybe people expect more from you. Caroline says, why? Because being good comes so easy to me? Well, guess what? It doesn't. I'm a vampire, so I have the same impulses as you. I'm allowed to make some mistakes along the way. Yes, I slept with Klaus, but after you walked away from me. That was my choice, and I'm living with it, and I don't need to be hearing about it every 5 seconds. So get over it, or get out of my life, but I'm done feeling guilty. And that's the denouement.
Girl boss! /S.
/S. I always confuse S and SRS. S is sarcastic? Yes.
S is sarcastic, yes. I think the SRS thing is like superfluous because it's like we would assume you're being serious.
I assume you're serious by default. But I guess the point is if there's no tone indicator, it could be interpreted in multiple different ways. So I get it. there is a lot to be said here.
Gosh.
And I have a lot to say here. So, I think the sentiment of this scene is something that generally I agree with. Often in media and in stories, women, and she doesn't make the gender thing explicit. Caroline doesn't make it a gender thing, but I think that's part of it. Women are judged more harshly for making the same choices men would, and that men get very little flack for. I also think that's especially true within the Vampire Diaries. I also think that with Caroline, who is often seen as the best of the vampires and existing in defiance of the monstrosity that comes with vampirism, we're always talking about it. There could have been a lot more done with the idea of like morally gray, darker side, whatever, that they were always mentioning but never actually doing. That would be interesting. But seemingly the only avenue the show is interested in exploring that is through romantic pursuit.
Of a man.
And I say pursuit lightly because she's never actually chasing after that man. But that's a separate thing. The thing that undercuts this point is that not a single person around Caroline has judged her for sleeping with Klaus or even brought it up in conversation, except for Tyler, who was directly affected by that choice. Further to that, it keeps coming up with Tyler because Caroline keeps pursuing Tyler, even though Tyler has very clearly said he is still hurt and processing. So it's like, I think this would be a non-issue if when Tyler asked for space, Caroline just gave him the space. I think this would have never been brought up.
Two internet memes come to mind. I don't know why I'm so memey today.
No, please.
Two internet memes come to mind. It's that one where it's usually like presented as a party and the one person is standing in the corner thinking something like, oh, they don't know I'm fill in the blank, and the other group is like on the side and they don't care.
Yes.
So I would say Caroline's there being like, oh, they don't know I'm done feeling bad about sleeping with house. Meanwhile, these people are like, we don't care. We've not brought
No
it up.
concern about that.
The other one, similar meme, where there's the one person who makes a statement while standing apart from a group of people, and then the group of people give like that massive
giant thumbs up.
As if to be like, okay, sure, bro. No one was talking to you. We don't care.
It's insane, right? Like, this is insane.
Also, I'm like, how are these two things even comparable? It's like, oh, someone died because of the hybrid bite that you gave them in self-defense as they attacked you and your friends.
Right.
How come you're not being judged for that, but I'm being judged for the consensual sex I had with the serial killer who tormented us for 2 years?
That's the thing too. At the top of this episode, Tyler mentions that he may have nipped Nadia a little bit as a, like, when they're discussing how are we going to draw Catherine in. And he's like, hey, here's something we might be able to use. And suddenly Caroline turns on him and said, you bit her? And it's like, we suddenly care about Nadia, who was compelling your friend and trying to kill you guys? Who helped Catherine possess Elena? What are we talking about?
And suddenly Tyler's hybrid bite is something that, you know, it's a last resort that he's not supposed to use lightly.
It's his best weapon. I'm like, against a 500-year-old vampire trying to kill him.
You know,
trying to kill you. Because she was trying to kill Caroline and he jumped in the way to save her. I hate this so much.
And I'm like, Caroline Forbes, not 1 season ago, you were telling Tyler to build a bridge and get over the deaths of the hybrids that you guys were offering up to Klaus.
His friends.
Along with, you know, a date. And then you killed a witch who was trying to purge Bonnie of her expression and murdered all her friends along with her. So why is it suddenly like, no, guys, I'm Captain America and we don't kill our enemies? That was wrong with you, Tyler.
I don't get it. And I genuinely think this beat, in all the Caroline muck that we've had to endure, is very much a retrofit, right? And that might be why it feels so insane by this point. It's because we have to have Klaus and Caroline sleep together for reasons. And then we have to have Caroline be in the right by the end of all this. So the solution is, Tyler, you're actually a misogynist asshole for being mad that she slept with the guy who killed your mom and all your friends. That's the only solution at the end of this. Ugh. And I just... I think it's insane.
I think I'd actually forgotten until you brought it up, until you came with receipts, that no one has mentioned it.
Nobody.
But now she's talking about, I'm tired of everybody bringing it up.
It's like, what? Nobody's talking about this. Bonnie's dealing with anchor bullshit. Bonnie's still not even alive, technically. She is a ghost straddling two worlds, and Jeremy is helping her deal with that. Elena's fully being possessed right now by an entirely different person.
Stefan is not judging her.
Actively said, I will not judge you. And nobody else even knows. So what are
The
we...
voices in her head, her own guilt manifesting
That's what it is, right?
false memories.
Because she went around to multiple people and said, tell me I'm a horrible person for doing this. So it's like, maybe you're projecting a little bit? Why is that
projecting
Tyler's
a
fault?
lot?
Baffling storyline that I never want to think about again. And we're past it now.
Like I said, Tyraline dead. They dug up the corpse and then desecrated
And kicked it around a bit. They exhumed its body and stabbed it with a rod of cold iron to really make sure.
And after all that, the takeaway is that Tyler was in the wrong. Which I'm like, you know what's funny is if we had left it where we left it before all the Klaus nonsense, Tyler was technically in the wrong. She begged him to choose their relationship over his vendetta, and he couldn't do it. And it was like, we understand why you can't do it, but you are wrong for that, Tyler. You chose to walk away. But now it's like, okay, now Tyler's feelings about the whole Klaus of it all, you know, outside of your relationship or maybe in the wake of your relationship, however you want to view it, it's like, he's very much justified, but we're going to treat it like, no, he's wrong, and he's always been wrong in the way he's conducted himself around the Caroline of it all. And it's like, what?
Similar to how Caroline, in the context of Damon and Elena, is treated as though she is wrong, because we care about this pairing that we have created that on paper is insane.
Ugh. And at least with Damon, it's like, yeah, he's the one true love of the main character, so we have to swallow this bitter medicine. But with Caroline, I'm like, we are doing way too much for a man who has left this show.
Who's not even here. So, Tyler's the bad guy, and we close that storyline there. And it's gonna feel so insane to hear this. But the next episode is when she meets Enzo St. John for the first time.
Oh, you tried it, CW.
Part of me was like, was all that shit about, I'm done feeling guilty about A, B, and C, I won't be judged, I make mistakes, a darker side of being a vampire, was that all set up for this?
I've heard you got a thing for guys with accents.
Right. Because if that's the case, again, I hate it. I have nothing new to add about Caroline and Enzo from Caroline's perspective that hasn't already been said in the Enzo episode, because outside of scenes with Enzo, he does not come up for Caroline. So go back to that if you want deeper thoughts.
Yep.
But this is the episode where Caroline and Stefan meet with Enzo and the Travelers. Their de facto leader, Sloane, tells them that they will hand over Wes's antidote to the, quote, Ripper virus, end quote, that Elena and Damon have now, if they locate and kill Stefan's only remaining doppelganger. And to do that, they need to psychically link Stefan to that guy the way that Katsia did with him and Silas. There's a cute scene where Caroline and Stefan are talking about this whole situation, and she is, of course, worried for his safety and that he might lose his memories again, because that's what made him amnesiac the first time. He's like, look, if the worst does happen, and then Caroline cuts in and says, I'll kill them. And Stefan's like, all right.
Oh, murder is okay again. Okay. Interesting. Funny that. When it's the timeline faves, it's funny how they get away with it.
Yeah, no. Stefan's like, all right, then you'll spiral out of control about killing them, and then do me a favor and remind me that we were friends. And then they smile very sweetly at each other. So that's nice. The Travelers start psychically linking Stefan to his doppelganger, Tom Avery, and find him. He's an EMT busy saving someone's life. But then they keep pushing through the psychic link to try and kill Tom, because that's the plan all along. But Stefan starts to bleed from his ears and, cry out. Caroline rushes up to Sloane with one of the, it's not a Traveler knife, but it is a knife that the Travelers have. And she holds it to Sloane's neck and tells it. Because I was about to say Traveler knife, and I'm like, it's not.
It's not a Traveler knife. It is a knife that the Travelers have.
Right, which in a sense is a Traveler knife, but not quite the same way.
But not the Traveler knife.
So she's like, stop, there's another way that we can all get what we want. And when we next see them, Caroline and Stefan, that is, Stefan is coming to from unconsciousness and Caroline is smiling down at him. And Stefan squints at her and says, "Rebecca, hi." And she's like, "Oh my God, no." And then he starts laughing and he's like, "Kidding. You're Lexi, right?" And she punches him on the shoulder. Oh, it's so funny.
See, he's not always broody. He has a sense of humor.
Right, Stefan's fun when he wants to be. Stop the propaganda. I don't care. Then Enzo comes by and is like, "We gotta go, princess," or whatever. I don't know. I don't pay attention to what Enzo says. So Caroline explains to Stefan that she struck a deal with the Travelers. She would personally go with Enzo to go kill Tom Avery so that they would stop using Stefan as like a psychic mind jack to kill Tom. So Stefan's obviously like, "I can't let you go through with that." And Caroline says, "Listen, it's him or you." Stefan's like, "Well, then I'm coming with you." Enzo then says, "The Travelers need you to keep track of Tom or whatever." And so Caroline's like, "It's fine, don't worry. Besides, you'd do the same for me," which she's calling back to their earlier conversation in which she'd asked Stefan, who volunteers themselves to get their brain fried a second time? And Stefan was like, "I'd do it for you too." That's how that one ends. And then the next episode is her and Enzo on the trail to kill Tom Avery. And it's largely about Caroline psyching herself up to do this, because it's very much not in her nature to kill innocent people as a means to an end. And she's also got Enzo on her shoulder about it, though by his claim, he is genuinely trying to make sure she's up for the task. She gets in contact with Sloane at some point to tell her that what they saw of Tom when they were doing the psychic stuff was from a while back. They went to where he was and he has not been there for weeks. And then they're like, "Okay, it's old memories. We need to mind jack Stefan again to get a more current location." And Caroline's like, "No, the whole point of this was so you wouldn't do that." And Sloane's like, "What? I couldn't hear you. I'm already doing it." So Caroline starts speaking directly to Stefan. She's trying to like keep him grounded so that he doesn't lose himself. When it's done, Stefan says, "I'm still here." And then he gives her an address and a description of this woman, Hazel, that Tom spoke to. And he then tells Caroline not to go through with it because Tom Avery is clearly a good person. They find Hazel, she's at this address, turns out she's a witch, and she's busy casting some sort of spell in her house that I guess she's just been there for ages, just running. I think it's a cloaking spell. I think she was hiding Tom Avery. But it's like, girl, when do you eat? Has she been sitting in that spot for weeks? Have you taken a shower? Questions. I have several. So they can't get into the house because this woman, Hazel, owns it. And Caroline's like, "Well, damn it, that was our only lead." And Enzo's like, "Girl, why are you acting like we're out of options?" Takes the doorknob that he ripped out of the door for them to open it and flings it through the witch's head, killing her and allowing them to get into the house.
Gosh. And what would he have done if that house was going to be inherited by somebody who lives 1,000 miles away and they still can't get in?
I guess you'd have to sign over the deed, right? At this point in the story, that's the only way.
Oh, I thought the TVD always treated it like, oh, if you have like a will and you die, the magic of the house automatically passes to whoever is in that will, and now the vampire needs that person's permission, which is why Damon asked.
Yeah, well, at the beginning in season 1, he asked, "Do you have any living relatives, whatever. But like at a certain point, it's like, I guess every person we've killed to gain entry to their home all have no wills or are orphans. So I don't know. Yeah, so this is where that Caroline Enzo conversation happens, where she's like decrying what he's done, and Enzo's like, "This was our one option, and I was willing to take it. You clearly weren't. So how exactly do you plan on killing an innocent man to save your bestie Stefan's life?" Caroline then says, "You think this comes easy to me? You don't know me, so let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Caroline Forbes. I am a good vampire, and I don't just go around killing people." How does this interplay with the scene with Tyler, where she was telling him being good doesn't come easy to her? That is for y'all. I'm moving forwards in my life. I don't think I care. Enzo says something rarely insightful. He tells Caroline he was in war, and he's seen soldiers on the battlefield freeze up at critical moments and it costs their lives. So that's why he's trying to make sure she's like up for the challenge. And Caroline's like, I'm not a soldier and this isn't war, but Stefan is my darling bestie and I'll do just about anything for him. Then they hear Tom Avery's heart downstairs. So they head on down and find him hooked up to an IV and unconscious. Enzo's like, all right, so I guess I'll just kill him. And Caroline's like, no, I made the deal. I have to do this. She then reaches for Tom's neck with both of her hands, hesitates, and then Tom wakes up. Because I guess magic was keeping him down. He wasn't like sedated or anything. And now Hazel's dead. I don't know. Tom's like, who are you? Enzo says, we're angels, mate, here to deliver you to the sweet hereafter. Which tickled me a little bit. Caroline then compels him to stay calm and to trust her, and Enzo's like, how is bonding with him going to help you kill him? Girl, what are we doing? She then rushes to Enzo and snaps his neck and busts Tom out.
Love it.
They then head off, and we see them at a diner where she's bought him lunch and he's eating like he hasn't had a meal in months because he hasn't. And she has him tell her everything about him because she's looking for something, anything nasty in his life to like lock onto. But Tom really is just a nice, good guy. Then as he's thanking her for saving him, he starts choking on his food because he's eating so damn fast. And Caroline sits there watching him, and he reaches for the glass of water near him and she pulls it away and he starts passing out. And then we cut away and we see that that's just happening in her head. So I thought that was wild. I've always loved that scene. It's very Monster in Law. Like that scene with Jennifer Lopez just swinging the bat. She then tells Tom that what she needs from him is something she can't take. So she compels him to get on a train, ride away, settle down, and be happy forever. As they head down to her car in a parking lot nearby, Enzo steps up and snaps Tom's neck. And that's that. Thoughts? I don't know.
I mean, Caroline, with your hyper-organizing skills, I don't know why you thought that the neck snap for Enzo was gonna last long enough for you to dally in a nearby diner, but
for a full meal, like a 40-minute meal, that wasn't like a quick bowl of muesli. Like, she got him waffles and eggs. That man was
stuff that needs
down.
to be cooked after you order it in a kitchen that's already busy with other people's meals.
When you're done, you need like 15 minutes to just unbuckle your pants and sit with it. Like, I don't know what the plan was. Pulling back to something you said earlier about all this morally gray, vampire, Caroline, the good vampire situation. This is where I think an interesting thread could have been pulled if they wanted to do a more morally gray Caroline. Because really the first instance was, and this is assuming there's at all times consistency in the way the story and these characters are written, so take it with a grain of salt if you want. But the first instance was the vampire genocide that they were considering in season 3, which she personally didn't need to have a hand in, right? So that was all theoretical. Then, as you mentioned, Fadzai, it was Aja and her coven of convenient 12, where on instinct, she tried to kill one person that was killing her friend and accidentally killed all 12 of them. And in this moment, we're talking about her killing one person, innocent, yes, and by all accounts, as we see, really good, yes, to save her best friend. This is the choice you have Caroline make if you want to play in that space of like morally gray, darker choices. I make mistakes, so I act on impulse, whatever. There are 2 upcoming moments that we'll get to that step in that direction, but even in those, there are allowances made. So I just don't buy the morally gray thing that they keep suggesting about her.
It was only relevant when it was being used as an excuse for her banging Klaus. Beyond this, she is just pure as the unwashed white snow.
Hello?
Is that how it goes? Not unwashed snow. What is it? The pure as the freshly fallen snow. Something like that. I don't know.
Oh, I see.
Because I mean, in a story where we've seen Stefan, who is largely a good person, make this kind of a call very often, like, oh, we have to kill this person to save our friends. It's strange that now it's like, no, we have to preserve Caroline's innocence. She can't be the one to kill Tom Avery. And I'm like, really? This story kills people all the damn time.
Right. I guess it's not the act of killing, it's the act of killing an innocent person who there's no justification you could make to kill this guy beyond you are just trying to save your one friend, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the conflict, which I get, but it's like you say, they kill people.
Yeah, and at this
killed
point,
people.
post, almost vampire genocide, I'm like, I don't believe you guys care. You were gonna kill a world full of potential Lexis and Stephans because you wanted to get rid of the 4 originals you weren't sired to.
It's a lot of having your cake and eating it too, with this, like, how good is Caroline really, and what does that mean in practice? And it's frustrating. She goes back to Stefan, who is lying on a bed in a truck, and she drops down next to him. She tells him that she failed, couldn't kill Tom, not even to save Stefan. And he's like, girl, how is that a bad thing? She's like, okay, then what do we do now? Stefan says, we go to sleep, because I need to recharge after being tortured all day while you were out flirting with yet another British man. Which is funny, but not now, Stefan. I don't want to hear that. She then clocks that Stefan knew the whole time she couldn't kill Tom. And Stefan says, not that you couldn't, that you wouldn't. Because that's what makes her Caroline.
Also, Stefan Klaus is not British. He is
He is Norse. He's
a Norseman born in the Americas.
I guess they were in England for a significant amount of time. Is that why they were in England for that long? Is that their explanation for why all of them sound British?
I mean, the only time we ever really see the originals in England is during, like, Katarina's flashbacks.
1492.
So who knows how long they were there. I guess they learned English fluently with English accents, and then they just kept speaking it that way.
Yeah, but you're right. He's not British. So But that's the thing, right? That's the energy we're playing. We're talking about Joseph Morgan.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. At this point in the discussion that they're having, the camera's been pushed in real close on their faces, and they're lying on this bed with their, like, shoulders touching. And after Stefan says this, Caroline kind of smiles to herself as she's looking at him. He's got his eyes closed, and he's like, I don't know if he's looking up at the sky or something, because I think the truck bed is open. Then she sort of snuggles up closer to him and puts her head on his shoulder, and then he leans his head slightly to touch hers. And that's how the scene ends.
And that, because I'm a blind fool, I suppose, that was the first moment I was like,
What's going on there?
Another meme, that blonde lady who's, like, making like she's trying to convince herself, but also she's like, no, but maybe, but wait,
that blonde lady, that's Brittany Broski.
I don't know who that is.
That's fair. She's a popular TikTok and now YouTube /podcast girl.
Oh, okay. I only know her from that meme. No offense to Brittany. I hope you're not American and that you're not being affected. Okay, well, you got YouTube, I guess.
She also faced a lot of flack about Palestine and shit. She was one of the first, like, people who was asked to speak up on it because of the platform, and she's like, why must I speak up on Middle Eastern politics? And it's like, all right, well,
and
moving on. But I think she's back now.
But yeah, I saw that and I was like, this feels a little tender. And I was like, is it in my head? And I was like, no, but this is a television show that was shot with cameramen and directors and actors and scriptwriters and everything is intentional. Also, it's the CW. So I was like, But Denial is a river in Egypt. And I was like, it's fine. It's probably nothing.
For me, on first watch, this was the first moment. On second watch, it was the safe episode. And at the time, I was very like, oh. I wasn't sure how I felt about it as yet, but I was at the very least being like, this is an interesting direction I didn't expect. But I can't remember very clearly more than that. Probably because the whole season was just like making me so mad that I blocked all of it out.
I was more like, this is going to be an insane analogy. Don't lose your mind.
Okay.
I was more like a queer-phobic parent.
What?
Clocking something a little queer in their child's behavior and being like, nah, probably not. I'm sure my child is cishet. I don't want it to be true, so I'm just going to assume it's not true.
This episode is not free of homophobia. Let's put that in the content warnings. Thank you. Fair enough. Next episode is just doppelganger nonsense that's not super important. But she has that butler and nanny moment with Enzo where they're discussing the lead character's drama. And then there's a call with Tyler at the end of the episode where she tells him about the Traveler's plan to take over Mystic Falls, because this is the episode where they find out. But Tyler's already been passengered, so that's largely what that's for. She skips an episode, and then it's the one where she, Elena, Stefan, and Damon are at her dad's cabin, and she and Damon end up riling each other up because they both think something's going on with Stefan and Elena. Because Delena are broken up for like the fourth time. I don't care, man. They're out in the woods looking for Luke, who was doing a cloaking spell to hide them from the Travelers. But he's been snatched by a ghost Enzo because Enzo died last episode. God, this season. Caroline to Elena, while they're out in the woods, is like, damn, girl, I get you didn't tell your boyfriend Enzo was dead because, again, he will go around killing people at the slightest hint of bad news. But it's crazy you didn't tell me. Elena's like, I didn't want to put you in an awkward position. And Caroline says, more awkward than accusing you and Stefan of being makeout buddies again? And Elena's like, actually, now that we're on the subject, what was that about? Caroline's like, I don't know. And Elena's like, are you over it? And she says yes. So they move on. Later, Caroline goes to Stefan and is like, hey, we're friends, right? We tell each other things and trust each other and all that. And Stefan's like, girl, don't take this personally. It's not because I don't trust you that I didn't tell you about Enzo. Caroline says, right, but you trust Elena more. Which, you know, I get it. Of course you would. Like, it's Elena. It just sucks to be out of the loop. And it's like, Caroline, what is this really about? Have we reflected? Stefan, so sweet, is like, if it makes you feel any better, there's stuff I tell you that I don't tell Elena. And Caroline's like what? And he says, like you have dirt on your cheek. And then he reaches out to thumb it away from her face. So that's kind of cute. He then says maybe he didn't want her to know he killed Enzo, which, to be clear, he didn't. Enzo committed suicide and framed Stefan for his death. I hate the revisionism of this season within the season. Caroline is like, why? And first, Stefan says, you know, y'all had that weird chemistry thing going on, to which he's like, don't talk nonsense to me, please. And then he says, I didn't want you to think less of me. And there's this small charged pause. And then he says, I'll meet you by the car. And then he walks off. Again, more going on here. He doesn't meet her by the car. He and Elena get snatched by Travelers. But that's not relevant. It's not what we're talking about right now.
I think at the time I was like, this is two friends having a conversation about their friendship.
And that's true. Mostly.
Listen, everything else in this show was crumbling around me. I was clinging to what I had left. Because at this point, right, the only ship I had left was Baramy.
Right.
Who rarely gets screen time.
Who was struggling, but going strong. And actually, let's talk about it before we get into season 6, because we're going to reach a point where there's not going to be necessarily space to talk about our personal feelings on, like, this ship. As we've hinted throughout the Caroline episode, and as you've said prior, you're not the hugest fan of Steroline, right?
I'm not.
Can you get into a little bit as to why that is?
As I've said many other times, I'm a big fan of purely platonic friendships between straight male characters and straight female characters. I enjoyed that when Lexi was introduced, the story was like, categorically, there has never been anything between these two. Stefan loves her like a sister. Never has, never will. And when Caroline was brought in, like when they became closer and he was like her mentor, and then she became like his sponsor because she far like surpassed him in terms of managing her vampirism, I was like, oh great, she's the new Lexi. Then Lexi herself shows up and is like, oh look, the new me. And Stefan, I think before that had said, well, okay, I think Stefan before that had said, oh, you remind me of Lexi. Then Lexi showed up and was like, the new me. That she's cute line felt like a throwaway to me. I was like, it didn't seem that important. When we get to a stage that the story is now pairing these two together, I was like, Caroline, you were Stelena's biggest shipper. I thought you were on my side. You betrayed me. So within the story, I was just like, well, disappointing that now I feel as though, yes, there's obviously a beautiful way of looking at a truly organic, devoted friendship evolving into something more, even if that was not the intention when two people became friends. I'm still like, well, now looking at this thing, I'm like, well, now because it's the CW, I'm like, were the writers always playing around with this idea? And now, like, in universe, I'm like, oh, so you two were like, you always thought like the other one was like physically attractive, I guess. Fine. And then, like, from outside the story, I'm like, because Delena is now endgame and Stefan will never get to be with Elena, I'm like, this just to me kind of felt like a consolation prize. Like, don't be sad. We're gonna pair Stefan off with one of the other lead girls. And I'm like, Caroline Forbes is not a consolation prize, okay? I don't need her to be with Stefan because he decided 5 years after the fact that actually I should have said yes to you when you asked me out that very first day of season 1. I'm like, no, you killed my favorite Caroline ship with Tyler so that she could sleep with Klaus, and then you think you can put Stefan over this as a Band-Aid and put her as a Band-Aid over Stelena, and I'm like, no, neither of these people are Band-Aids. I refuse to see it that way. You have spat in my face for the last time, Julie Black.
Okay. Let's see where to start. I of course agree with you, and I am on record on this podcast being of the opinion that I'm a huge fan of platonic relationships, particularly when it comes to the heterosexuals. Above that, I'm a huge fan of familial relationships because often in stories like this, romantic relationships are prized above, that. I am also of the opinion that friendship can very often turn into something more, especially later in life, because people grow and people change, and we can come to see people in our lives in a different light than we did before. In context to Lexi, I think I was never fully happy about the idea. We want to talk about the idea of consolation prize, right? I was never fully happy with the idea that, like, Caroline is meant to be this very neat replacement for Lexi in Stefan's life, because Caroline's her own person. Yes, they fulfill similar roles as friends to Stefan, but I'm not super into the idea that as a result of that similarity, she should follow that same trajectory. But that's like a minor thing. With regards to Caroline in the context of Stelena, I think this is where you and I differ in how we felt at the time of Stelena's collapse. I am someone for whom it is quite easy to let things go. That may not sound like the truth given how much I talk about Delena on this show, but that's because I am constantly researching Delena in that week that I talk about them. When I stop recording, I move on with my life and I never have to think about them. But in that season, when it became clear that Stelena was not in the cards as the story was concerned, and it was probably around the second time where they suggested that there was a fate bringing them together, and it turned out to be a witch giving them visions both times, I was like, oh, I guess no then. And I moved on, because I was like, okay, why do I need to expend energy on that when the story and everyone around me far prefers the alternative? So I didn't really view this as like a replacement of that, because that had not been a thing for me for like half a season already, I also just like Stefan and Caroline both. I like them independently. I like them together. I at least was excited about the option of seeing them together because they had been moving together in a way that was interesting. Sort of more and above their friendship that had already existed for 2-ish years at this point. So I was like, there's been enough work done to differentiate, at least for me, who they are as best friends and who they are as whatever it is that's happening now. I think that's what made it comfortable for me. I think also that in terms of physical attraction, again, like I said earlier, you can come to see people in a different light later on in life. So it doesn't necessarily mean to me that they always were just like physically attracted to each other. I'm sure they must have thought that, Caroline obviously thought Stefan was very attractive. She tried to like grab him the first time she saw him. I'm sure Stefan thought Caroline was pretty, but wasn't interested in her, at least in that way. But that changes sometimes later in life. So yeah, I guess that's sort of all the stuff as to why I do like Stereline and was perfectly happy with them setting them up at this point. you know?
All true. And I can appreciate that, at least, unlike with our shared disdain for Delena, we can present two different sides to this ship for our dear listeners,
right,
and how we feel about it. Those of you who love Caroline will be like, yay, Sandile, speaking for me. And those of you who are like, wasn't really feeling it. I know a lot of people didn't even make it that far into the show, so maybe they're surprised that that's what happened.
They're like, Stefan and Caroline? Why? Fair enough. If you didn't see this trajectory in season 5, you'd be baffled.
And I'm on record on this podcast as saying many times that the relationship is handled very nicely. It's a beautiful slow burn. I can't sit here and claim that it was badly written or shoehorned in very clumsily. I didn't want it to happen, but it was done very well.
Okay.
It's like,
that's fair.
You know what? Caroline for me is like at whatever sports match. You're on the sports field playing the game. You lose, but you go up to your opponents and you're like, you know what? Nice game. You played really well. Obviously, I wanted to win.
Right.
But well done to you.
You've had some impressive skills. That's interesting. That's an interesting analogy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I am the coach, so, in that analogy. So I am dancing down the end field. Is that what's it called? The end lines? The sideline.
It depends which sport, I guess.
I used to know football. What is it? Yeah, they're linesmen who stand on the... Never mind. Y'all know what I'm saying. Okay. That was fine and healthy. Nobody died. Nobody punched anyone's eyes out. I think we did well. Next episode. Caroline is sidekicking for Damon for a bit because the travelers are now enacting their plan to put an anti-magic bubble over the town. But she ditches him when she realizes he has no idea what he's doing. She then goes to interrogate Julian, the guy who has passengered into Tyler. They have him locked up in the Salvatore basement. And she gets some more info about their vendetta against spirit magic, which is why they're, doing that bubble in town. There's a presumed plan that Bonnie has a spell for Liv to bring her and Enzo over now that the other side is collapsing. So Caroline is like, okay, we can use this to get back Tyler. We just kill him and his traveler now, and then we bring him back for the other side. When she tells Bonnie this, Bonnie's like, there is no spell, I made it up, and I'm going to die. So maybe don't kill Tyler. Deuces. So... Anyways, the anti-magic spell sets off, so all the supernaturals have to scramble and leave town. Damon and Elena leave first, of course. Stefan waits for Caroline at the edge of town, and then Julian in Tyler's body rocks up looking for his wife, who died at the beginning of the episode. Don't worry about it. He's then like, if I'm not happy, no one can be, and rips Stefan's heart out. I think practically it's to stop the Traveler's spell, but it's really just because it's like... I'm pissed. Stefan collapses and dies in the penultimate episode of the season. And I remember so vividly this scene of Caroline at Stefan's side crying for someone to help while Rain's Don't Let Me Go is playing in the background. I remember just being like, no, this can't happen. This isn't true. This isn't real. No, what? And then having to wait a week in which I was just like losing my mind until the finale. In the finale, she brings his body to the common room at Whitmore. Elena and Damon find her crying, and she's like, Bonnie has a plan, right? She can bring him back, surely. So they start organizing. Caroline and Elena track down the Parker twins, Liv and Luke, to try and strong-arm them into bringing Stefan and Bonnie and Enzo back. But they refuse. They're like, even if we wanted to, our coven would kill us. Caroline turns to Luke, who is the one who said this, and says, Stefan saved your life. And there's such venom in her voice when she says this, which I'm like, more of this, please, if we're going to talk about morally grey, whatever. More of Caroline being like, hey, cut the shit, because it's fun. Luke says, I know, but... And then Liv, which is fun. It's the only time they do this at twins. Liv finishes his sentence and says, we can't risk it. Caroline then vamp rushes over and snaps Luke's neck and says, your brother's officially on the other side. Think you can risk it now? Which, huge.
She's not playing anymore.
Right. This is one of the two moments I mentioned where it's like, this is what you do if you want to play in that space. She does this with the knowledge that they're going to be able to bring him back from the other side, but it's still big that she snapped that guy's neck, no question, who is a human, effectively. They then enact their plan to explode all the travelers at the Mystic Grill, while Liv does the spell to use their souls to overwhelm Bonnie as the anchor so that all their friends can slip through the back door. Tyler comes back. I can't remember when they killed Julian. Doesn't matter. and he hugs Caroline and then realizes that he's come back just as an untriggered werewolf. This is basically their only resolution this season. They have one scene together in season 6, but outside of that, they basically never speak again, which is just sad to think about. But it's fine, because we're moving on. We take this moment to mourn. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today at the graveside of Caroline. As we know, Luke, Enzo, Rick, and Stefan all also come back, but Damon's too late because Luke shuts down the spell to keep it from killing his sister. Caroline goes to find Stefan sitting on a bench, and he tells her he lost the 2 people he's known longest in this world because, of course, Lexi was there on the other side, and she beat Marcos's ass instead of coming through.
The story briefly let me believe Lexi was coming back to life, and I'll never forgive them for that. In a season full of disappointments, that was the cherry on top. Enzo made it through, but Lexi
and you know what?
didn't.
I think that's the one. I think it would have only helped for maybe that's why they don't bring her back. It would have helped the storyline setup if we brought Lexi back and differentiated Lexi and Caroline in the spaces they occupy in Stefan's life, you know? Something that occurred to me now. Stefan then says Damon was finally happy and he should be here, which is like, okay. He starts crying, and so Caroline hugs him. Bonnie, of course, was never coming back, so she also disappears. And only when Jeremy comes running in do the rest of them find that out. And that's how season 5 ends.
Oof.
Thoughts on Caroline in season 5?
A lot for her to do this season, mostly as a support to other characters. Her biggest thing, I guess, is the dissolution of her relationship with Tyler, which we've discussed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her farewell to Klaus, which I'm like, you know what's funny?
Uh-huh.
I actually forgot to bring it up. I think you brought it up in the last episode, though. Another thing where the trajectory just completely changes is season 4 ends with Klaus saying, Tyler is your first love. I intend to be your last. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly it's like, yeah, I'm leaving for my spin-off show, which has already begun. I'm not coming back. Let's just bang it out one time for old time's sake.
Just to get this out of the way, you know? And I must stress again, he kills himself at the end of the originals, having never pursued Caroline again.
They do have a few conversations here and there between like crossovers.
That mean nothing.
But yeah, they're never ever romantically involved again, even post the end of the Vampire Diaries as a show.
Maybe they bring him back in Legacies, I'm sure. And it's like, ooh, now they have the chance.
It's just, yeah, annoying that those were like her 2 biggest like storylines that revolved around her. She certainly gets a lot to do in season 6, but she does thrive in her support role, not to take away from what Caroline is given to do. She's certainly important to Stefan's story. She fulfills the same role in Delena's story as she has always fulfilled, the bitter naysayer.
Mm-hmm. Which is like,
how involved is she with Bonnie? Because I mean, we've barely discussed her and Bonnie this season.
So Bonnie's dead for the first 6 episodes, as we know. And then she comes back, but... Well, what story does Bonnie have?
She's a
the
ghost,
anchor.
then an anchor.
That's about all Bonnie has going on.
Gosh.
So, there's not really much Caroline can do for her. Bonnie is mostly with Jeremy this season, so, you know, good for her and them. But yeah, I don't think Caroline's involved with Bonnie at all.
So she's just with the Salvatores and Elena. I mean, she's barely even with Matt, who is...
And Enzo.
Who?
If there are any Matt scenes, they weren't important. Oh, it's the Nadia situation is pretty much the one, like, big Matt scene.
It would have been nice this season, which is something it almost feels like they wanted to play around in but didn't know how to. With the whole, it's college now. Sometimes you either redefine yourself by choice or the new environment you're in redefines you. That, you know, Caroline, the good girl, the sweet, innocent one, pure as the freshly fallen snow who can do no wrong. If they wanted to play around in like, maybe there are darker aspects to her, now would have been a nice time to do it because it's like, she's in college, she's in a new environment. But it's weird that the only place they want to play with that is in like one conversation about Klaus with Tyler.
Precisely.
And then I guess deciding whether or not to kill Tom Avery.
I guess it's because everyone else in the group, save Bonnie, is worse than her. So she has to be the like end point at which to benchmark, which is a shame for her as a character. because that's a meta thing that then hinders her when she could have some more interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, maybe if we weren't constantly recycling everybody else through the same moral, journey,
Right.
there would have been time for Caroline to do that. Again, season 6 will have some interesting stuff for us to play around in. But it's always Stefan is a ripper and Damon is a monster until Elena fixes it. And I'm like, yeah, we've been down this road before. Give someone else a chance.
At least on Damon's part, we've done this every season. With Stefan, it's every 3 seasons. It's like, God.
Even in like the college of it all, she doesn't get to do much colleging.
They party sometimes. Or do you mean like actual
Yeah,
stuff?
I mean like academically, like
your
seeing her through. I mean, she's reading up on stuff to help Stefan with his PTSD, but and then she's like trying to...
That has nothing to do with her drama.
trying to worm her way into Dr. West's class, but it's like, I wanted to see Caroline. Of all the people in this show, she's the one I know didn't compel her way into this place. I wanted to see her be a college girl. Maybe go through that thing, but a lot of people go through where they're like, I was a straight A student in high school. Why am I now struggling for C's in university?
Yeah, my exact experience. I would have loved to see that. ADHD burnout, let's go.
Yeah, and obviously it's a supernatural drama show.
I would have loved to see an acting class.
Oh, and
Yeah, like a movement class. That would be fun.
And I guess we don't have time for all these like frivolous background scenes, but I'm like, if we had time for a quickie with Klaus in the woods, I don't know, maybe show me one lesson at school.
Clearly we're not hurting for page space here, so maybe let's flesh out this actual college thing. We'll have plenty of time for Elena's medical school next season, so...
I like medicine because my dad was a doctor.
Cool. Gotcha.
It's the medical equivalent of, I know cars because my dad was a mechanic.
It's exactly that.
I guess Caroline does have like one like adult sort of college experience, which is like, I had a poorly judged hookup and, I felt really bad about it, had my walk of shame. Unfortunately, a lot of that shame did not come from outside. Like, nobody was really judging her except Tyler, who has every right.
I don't know, it's weird.
But, I mean, also, season 5 as a whole, as we've said, worst season of the show.
So bad.
Yeah. Symptoms of the disease that is season 5.
Outside of the obviously bad stuff. Yeah, this season was fine. She's very active. I like the Steroline stuff, so that was a pick-me-up at the end for me. But as you say, season 6, I think she's got a bit more going on. So that should be fun to get into.
Well, fun might be
we're about to get real low. Season 6. Oof. It's not a great place to start. It's never a great place to start these seasons for Caroline for whatever reason. But she has dropped out of Whitmore College. This is post Mystic Falls being covered by the anti-magic bubble by the Travelers. That stays up. That's the new status quo, as we say in comics. She has an apartment near the edge of town, apparently, since she and the other vamps can't go into town anymore. And she's having a border picnic with her mom. They apparently have spent the whole summer together. And she's like, girl, get out of here.
No, this is a summer of love I can get behind.
With your mom, mother-daughter bonding. She's also the only one in the group still trying to figure out how to actually drop this anti-magic spell. And her mom's like, please go hang out with your friends. You need to let this go. You need to move on. Which is kind of her whole thing for the first couple episodes of the season. Later, she finds Elena at the Mystic Falls border feeding on some helpless girl because she's high on herbs that make her hallucinate her dead boyfriend. And Caroline realizes that Elena is the border lurker, a vampire her mother has told her about that's been plaguing Mystic Falls lately. So that's yikes.
Frankly, she should have known, because this show will always be like, Mystic Falls, it's a popular spot for vampires. This town is crawling with vampires. And I'm like, yeah, that's you. It's just you guys.
It's the 5 of you who are constantly hanging around. She does give her a very similar speech to the one she gave in the first episode of season 3 about like having to process and move on with your life. Just because your boyfriend is missing in action or sucked away by an alternate death dimension doesn't mean you have to hit pause, At the end, Caroline is leaving a voicemail for Stefan because he has disappeared off the face of the map and apparently hasn't responded to her all summer, which I have thoughts on, but it's not his episode. Caroline is recounting in this message how everyone is drifting apart and everyone's drowning in their own problems, they're intercutting to everyone to establish what their conflict is for the season. She's trying so hard to hold everyone together, but she needs Stefan to come back and help her fix all this, because he's usually the one who can do that. On the other end, we see Stefan somewhere receive the missed call and the voicemail, and then crush his phone in his hand.
Jeez.
Which is wild. It has to be an Edward reference, right?
Edward did do that. He did that when he thought Bella was dead. Right. I mean, at this point, I would hope the show was beyond the Twilight references.
You know, it's like the superficial stuff aside, we've established Stefan is wildly different from that man. But anyway, next we see Caroline. She's with Rick, who tells her that he thought Stefan was chasing up the leads that he's been sending him to try and get back Damon and Bonnie, but apparently no. Caroline's like, okay, so while I've been wasting my time trying to crack this anti-magic bubble problem, all of you have been ignoring the class project. And Rick is like, well, actually, Enzo, who is inexplicably still around, has signed himself up on the register. So, I guess that's your group partner. She finds Enzo seducing some witch who gives them a lead to the Gemini Coven, which would be exactly who they need to speak to as the narrative unfolds this season, except Enzo doesn't take her there. He takes her to where Stefan is living in Savannah, Georgia. They have that wildly uncomfortable dinner with him and his new girlfriend, Ivy, and Enzo spends the entire time just poking and poking and poking. Caroline, meanwhile, is questioning Stefan. She's speaking like codedly because there's a girl with human ears around. There's a funny thing where they're like, oh, you work at an auto repair shop? I thought you were going into investigative work. It's like, it made me think of Stefan as a private eye. I thought that was fun.
I mean, if Jessica Jones can make it work.
Listen, you know, as a vampire too, you can make people tell you whatever you want.
Yeah.
You have super hearing.
It's Jessica Jones's powers meet Kilgrave's powers. Really, you'd be unstoppable.
As is proven by that one episode where they become a tag team. Stefan says he's happy doing what he's doing now and that they should just drop it. Enzo then stabs his hand with a fork, so that escalates the whole thing. Caroline has to compel Ivy to leave with her, and when she comes back, the boys have duked it out and Stefan snapped Enzo's neck, obviously. She asks why Stefan has stopped caring, because he's the one who always cared more than anyone. It's what she liked about him. And Stefan says, I had to move on because I followed every lead Rick sent me, and all of them were dead ends. And I couldn't go back to my old life after realizing there was nothing we could do. Caroline says, not even for me, because I thought we were closer than that. Couldn't you hear in all the voicemails I left that I was falling apart without you? And then when Stefan's face falls, she realizes that he never listened to any of her messages. Stefan says he didn't have a choice. He had to erase everything. Caroline, who is, you know, locking in now, she becomes like kind of furious. Is like, to summarize, you're a dick. And if you want Enzo out of your house, throw him out yourself. And then leaves. So, I guess nobody's winning in this. Tyroline's dead in the water. Klaus has gone after the quickie in the woods. And for whatever reason in season 6, there's just a lot of artificial hurdle for Steroline to get going because, I don't know, I guess what else could be a problem for them?
Because they have to make you feel like you worked for it.
But I feel like they did in season 5. I don't know.
Season 5 was still like very subtle and tender. That was probably them testing, okay, what do the fans like, what we're laying down? And then, you know, once the people who could see it and weren't in denial like me responded positively, they were like, okay, cool, now we're gonna make you beg.
God. Yeah, that's fair. Also, this episode, she's been trying to stop Elena from erasing her memories of her relationship with Damon. She goes to her car after this encounter with Stefan and calls Elena. And when Elena's responding, Caroline can tell from her whole vibe that she has now gone through with it. So she starts crying quietly because the one other person she could, like, share this pain with has chosen to lobotomize themselves, essentially. And so now she has to start pretending around her. After that, Caroline starts putting her stock in Enzo because there's literally no other constant around. She says as much to Elena. Enzo has become like the one constant in her life. Elena's like, all right, then invite him to this watering hole party that we're having. So apologies to Enzo, because I'm pretty sure in a prior episode I said that he showed up uninvited. Guess not. Caroline invites him. I didn't particularly scrub for it because, again, I don't super care about it. That said, there is a nice moment where they're having breakfast at a diner. This is when she invites him to the party, and she's running him through a list of rules of how to act around post-lobotomy Elena. The conversation that they have, the fact that Enzo, who up until this point has been a menace and has been writing to the tune of his own drum, is like begrudgingly being like, yes, okay, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, I won't mention A, B, and C. It's like, okay, this is kind of cute. She tells him Elena did what she needed to do to stop chomping on innocent people, but now Caroline's left to marinate alone in her misery.
I mean, actually what she needed to do was stop taking her magical drugs, but yeah, Elena.
well, she does stop taking the magical drugs, right? And then she goes, well, without them, I'm screwed then. I'm never getting over this. So I just need to lobotomize myself. That's my solution.
Go back to emotionless Elena. She was fun.
No comment. She loves Damon that much. Without him, she's nothing. Ugh. So Enzo's like, well, I'll marinate with you. Which, that's sweet. She's like, thank you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you've been hanging out with me in this time. And she says that with a hanging space at the end, which Enzo fills by saying, but I'm not Stefan. Caroline says, rule number 4, don't mention that jerk's name ever again. Now that it's been said, it's very clear that Caroline is displacing some friendship feelings that she has for Stefan onto Enzo, which anyone could tell you from miles away is a bad idea. Case in point, when he stands up, she spots some red on his t-shirt, and she asks if it's blood or pie, because they've been eating pie at lunch, and he tastes some of it and says, that'll be Shirley, a waitress at the diner. And Caroline's like, please tell me you snatched, ate, and erased. And he's like, no, I killed her. Who do you think I am? That goodwill ends there, I guess.
Why do the male vampires in this show only eat women? The only time they ever eat men is when it's someone's boyfriend who was with said woman.
Right, because it's either sexual or cuckoldry, right? Fellas, is it gay to drink another man's blood? Fellas. Help me out.
Apparently it's gay to even teach your newbie vampire girlfriend to feed off dudes, because Damon takes Lynn to a party and is like, feed off the sorority chicks.
Right.
That's hot.
Because that's what it's about. They go to the woods for the party that they're having, and they have some really sad jello shots with Tyler and Matt, which Tyler and Matt cannot even have because Matt's doing his pseudo-cop thing, and Tyler is an untriggered werewolf. So it's just Caroline and Elena, and after Caroline takes a shot, she's like, well, here we are, having fun. I'm having fun. Aren't we having fun? This is really fun. And Elena's like, I just wanted one afternoon where we pretended we're not all drifting apart. Caroline turns to her and says, that's the problem, Elena. Not all of us are okay with pretending. Some of us prefer to face our problems head on. Obviously, Elena has no idea what she's talking about because she doesn't remember.
Caroline subtweeting Elena with an account that Elena has been locked out of and no longer has access to.
Elena's gonna feel crazy when she comes back. The boys are like awkward and then leave. And Elena's like, okay, what was that? Caroline covers it and she says, don't mind me, I'm just lonely. Bonnie's gone because they remember her. Stefan's gone. Enzo, shocker, terrible friend. Elena's like, I'm still here, Care. And Caroline pats her on the leg like you would pat a child who still believes in Santa and says, yeah, you're still here. And then leaves the scene. Then there's a moment, this is not super important, but there's a moment where she goes to check the icebox and says out loud to no one in particular that Enzo was supposed to refill it. And this black girl who's standing next to her at this, it's a communal table, is like, did you say it in that tone? Because I think I know why you didn't. And now, is my good girl out of pocket for saying that? Maybe. But sometimes folks need to be told a little, just a little bit. Caroline says, congrats, now it's your job, and compels her to go get the ice to fill the box. Racial? Wild to resort to slavery because you're having problems, Caroline. I don't know. All I'm saying.
She was remembering Tiki from high school. Oh no, that was Bonnie's rivalry.
That was Bonnie's rivalry. She was thinking of Amber Bradley. She was thinking of Amber Bradley, who she compelled to leave. Because she was hanging around her man, who she was broken up with. It is weird how many scenarios Caroline ends up in that are just like weirdly racial. I don't know. She kills Carter as a newbie vampire, and it's like, okay. Calls Bonnie a thief. I don't know. It's just a number of
All
things
right.
Yeah, Stefan was supposed to join them at this party to apologize for his disappearing act, but he is across the woods bringing retribution to Enzo because, as it turns out, Enzo killed Ivy before they left Savannah. So that's where Caroline finds him with a shotgun pointed at Enzo. And she is like, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Ask your new bestie," and then leaves. And later she finds him, now knowing about Enzo having killed Ivy, and she apologizes. She's like, "I didn't know." But killing Enzo's not going to bring her back. Stefan is like, "I'm not trying to bring her back, but killing Enzo will stop him from reminding me of Damon." Which is like, okay. And he's like, "I can leave this place and start over again." So then Caroline's like, "Oh, so all the messages you left for me and Elena, that was all about just coming to kill Enzo?" And Stefan pauses for like 2 seconds and is like, "Yep." Caroline's like, "I don't believe you. I know you miss this place and all your friends, so stop trying to act. Just stay here. It's fine." And Stefan just walks away. I'm sorry. It's just, no, it's fine.
What?
I just
You have
I just
Stefan
feel
thoughts of a Stefan thoughts overwhelming you?
I think he has to be so wildly mischaracterized for this story to make sense, even though I know what they say later about why he does all this. It's just so un-Stefan to me, but it's fine.
We're in the later seasons now. Who is anyone when the writers decide they're someone else?
Yeah. At the end, Caroline finally moves back into Whitmore, and she and Elena, like, reconcile. Oh, Elena... When Caroline and Stefan have the conversation, Elena's like in the tree line, just kind of like listening in, which is kind of funny. But anyway, she then asks Caroline, "Do you have feelings for Stefan?" And Caroline's like, "Yeah, I think maybe I did." And so that's the first like proper confirmation of romantic feelings, and it's being spoken in past tense, which is just okay. That's the first arc, I guess, of this season. I don't know, it's just frustrating, that's all. I don't have any big thoughts on it.
I don't have many big thoughts on this. It's largely sterile energy, so...
Damn. Alright. I didn't realize, I guess I'm gonna have to shoulder all the thoughts on Steroline. This season's mostly Steroline, but what are we gonna do?
I mean, I'll have more. Right now, they're in a fight that doesn't really count because they're not actually a couple, and they have to treat the fight like it's about their friendship.
Sure.
So I'm like,
I mean, it is about their friendship still.
I know, but the thing that's at the heart of the fight is, oh, Damon is dead, and I'm so sad.
Yeah.
Also, Bonnie.
Also, Bonnie. Really is also Bonnie. Yeah. Next, we see Caroline at her dorm, and Stefan is busting down her door with a large chest that he's carrying, and inside it is Ivy, his girlfriend who Enzo killed, and apparently has turned into a vampire. Why? Who knows or cares? Stefan asks Caroline to take Ivy through Vampire 101 because, as we know, Caroline is the best at it. And he's like, "I'm gonna go get Luke to make her a daylight ring in the meantime." Which, I like that Stefan and Luke apparently just chat. I guess because they mentioned that he saved Luke's life, so I guess they've just had a friendship since then. I don't know. Yeah, Ivy is becoming kind of inconvenient because, as it turns out, she's like a party girl, and she wants to go out once night falls. But also she's clocked that Caroline is into Stefan, and she's like, "Just tell him, dude. Maybe it'll help you relax." So that's funny. Then, while Caroline's looking for a board game for them to play, Ivy snaps her neck and leaves. When she wakes up, she tries to find Ivy, but she can't. So she calls up Stefan, who apparently was already leaving town while this was happening, because his plan was to dump Ivy on Caroline and then leave. He says, "I slid the daylight ring under your dorm door." What?
The sheer audacity of being like, "Yeah, my ex-rebound is now undead, and that's an inconvenience to me. You take her. Girl I was vibing with last season.
Like,
Bye."
does that sound like Stefan Salvatore to you?
He's grieving because Damon's dead.
Oh, God. All right. Well, similar to Caroline last season when she was acting just wildly out of character, I have to say, to treat Stefan as acting normally within this plot, what a what an absolute asshole he becomes this season. God, it sucks.
I guess in the storyline of it all, he needs to be, because if he's his best self, then obviously, immediately, he needs to be with Caroline. What would be stopping them?
I write better conflict then. If the conflict requires you to completely write these characters contra to who they are, I don't think it's real. I don't think it counts. Obviously, Caroline is furious, and she's like, just get in your car and go at this point. And he just goes. He gets in his car and goes. And that's it. She gets a call from Ivy at the end. She's eaten a dude. And instead of compelling him to forget like Caroline taught her, she just tells him to run. So, I don't know. Caroline goes to get her, but by the time she gets there, she's actively being snatched by Trip Fowl. That's the end of that. She dies at the beginning of the next episode. Don't worry about Ivy. Next is the episode where Damon comes back. And also everyone learns Stefan handed Enzo over to Trip Fowl, who kept him alive instead of killing him. So now Enzo's going to snitch on all the vampires in town. Caroline and Stefan go to find him, and she is chewing Stefan out the entire time. So I guess that's cathartic. They don't find Enzo because Trip and his boys have moved him from the creepy shed that they were keeping him in. Also, they know Caroline's a vampire now because of her texts with Ivy. They have Ivy's phone. So they storm Caroline's dorm room, where they find Damon, who was waiting like a creeper there for Elena. That's when they all mobilize to stop Trip at the Mystic Fall exits, because he likes to drive vampires across the anti-magic border to kill them. But the boys handle all the actual action drama. Caroline and Elena just kind of standing at the border there. This is when she's like, I want my memories back. And then Caroline gets a call from Stefan that Rick went across the border, and Joe, new character Joe, who's a doctor, resuscitated him back as a human. So that's not gonna happen. Not Caroline relevant, but that's all that happens. The next episode, we see Caroline in her dorm room studying. And she looks at a picture of her, Elena, and Stefan, sort of like forlornly. And then a knock comes at the door, and it's Stefan, and she's like, that's weird. He's like, what's weird? And she says, none of your business. We're not friends anymore. And I'm just like, what's even happening? What is the tone here? Trip's boys are trying to get Trip back because the Mystic Falls gang have him now. They kidnap Caroline's mom. So Stefan drives Caroline to where Trip is. And at this point, he's told Enzo to torture him for the boys' locations and kill him after 2 hours. So Caroline has to call Enzo up while they're on their way and be like, don't kill him, we need him alive. When they get there to pick up Trip, Enzo tries the usual, banter with Caroline. It's like, hello, gorgeous, this, that, and the other thing. But it doesn't work because Caroline's too busy shouting at Stefan about half a dozen different things. And that's when Enzo's like, oh, I see. That's why she hates you. She doesn't hate you, mate. She's got a thing for you. Enzo's like, give my regards to your mother, and then leaves. And there's this long pause where Stefan turns from where Enzo was to look at Caroline. And Caroline's like, whatever he just said, it will never be discussed again. Okay? And Stefan's like, mm-hmm. And he's nodding, and he's got the widest eyes I've ever seen on Stefan.
Not Enzo being the one who reveals it. He's the person in the story being like, isn't it obvious? Don't you see? She's crazy about you.
I'm stepping aside as an honorable man. I won't stand in your way. They exchange Trip for Liz. He dies when he crosses the border because Enzo just loves secretly turning people into vampires. It's just his thing. Wish he turned Monique into a vampire before he killed her, but alas. They take Liz to go get checked up at the hospital. While she's fussing over her mother, she turns to Stefan and is like, you can go now, we're fine. But then Liz is like, Caroline, go check how long we have to wait. I don't want to be here. So Caroline heads out. While Liz is being seen to later, Stefan and Caroline are waiting outside her room. Stefan finally asks her, okay, I need to know why it is you have a thing for me. Explain to me how I missed this. She does say, maybe it's because I thought you were worth having a thing for. Because when I woke up as a vampire, you told me I'd get through it, and I did. Because when I watched Elena move on with your brother, I couldn't imagine why she would let anyone like you go. Because you're practically my best friend. Because I trusted you. And then Stefan apologizes and he's like, I'm sorry for not seeing it. I'm sorry for not. And then Caroline interjects and says, feeling it back. Stefan's like, no, that's not what I said. Hold on. He says, I don't know what I feel. My head's been all over the place right now with everything going on. But I am incredibly sorry for how I've treated you. Caroline is like, if even a little tiny piece of you felt for me what I was starting to feel for you, you would never have walked away. Which, you know.
That's a lot of pressure to put on something that hasn't fully formed yet, Caroline.
Right?
But all right.
That's a bit, you know, catastrophic, especially if considering the frame of reference. But I understand what you're saying. She then says she doesn't hate him for being the biggest jerk or for mourning his brother and that she forgives him. Stefan is like, but you do still hate me. And she's like, yeah, I do still hate you. Because if I don't, then I'd need to hate myself for ruining our friendship. And I think I deserve better than that. Which is fair. And she walks away. Completely unrelated, I hate that while my babies have to go through this nonsense, Delena, despite one of them having no memory of their relationship, gets to thrive in this episode.
I was trying to avoid the Delena digs for this second half, but since you brought it up, I'll say, you know that sportsmanship analogy that I gave Steroline? Mm-hmm. Delena, no such grace. Delena is me losing the match, throwing the ball or my tennis racket or whatever it is on the ground so that it either bursts or shatters, and saying, no, that wasn't a nice game because you cheated and the ref was on your side. And you were using steroids. And you were blood doping.
Also, you got a sangoma to put a lock on our goalposts. You were using every trick in the book. Next is Friendsgiving. Which Caroline... They have too many dead relatives for Thanksgiving, right? They have to do a Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
Which Caroline throws for a bunch of their friends and also Joe, while Rick and the Salvatore brothers are chasing down like Gemini Coven stuff. There isn't really much from this episode for Caroline, except A, Stefan is pointedly not invited to Friendsgiving, and B, this is where Caroline enters her long-suffering wine mom era. She's like throwing a party where a bunch of drama happens and she's just like, look at this lovely food, guys. Wouldn't it be great if we get back to the meal? Why don't we pour the drinks? There's a moment where Liv turns to her and is like, I'm sorry my family drama is too much for your little dinner. And Caroline's like, that's not what They've been talking about like horrible massacre of the Parker family, and Caroline's like, who wants egg rolls?
That is who she would be in that friend group. It makes sense.
At the end of the episode, Stefan comes to her dorm room as she's leaving, or as she's coming back, I don't know. And she's like, oh, great, that saves me a trip. Here's some leftovers from the dinner. Just because I hate you doesn't mean I want you to starve to death, which
is funny since he subsists on blood.
Don't need physical food, but it's cute. Stefan finally tells her that when Damon died, he pushed her away. And Caroline's like, yeah, you pushed everyone away. And Stefan's like, no, I pushed you away especially because I knew that you would be the one to sit with me and let me cry. And I didn't want to cry anymore. So I had to push you away. Caroline kind of like processes this and is like, oh, well, thank you for saying that. And then they're looking at each other, and then Stefan gets a little bit awkward. So Caroline's like, enjoy the leftovers. Exeunt left. Some progress. Then it's Christmas. So now it's been a year since Mrs. Lockwood was brutally murdered in a water fountain.
Has it been... Wait, so season 5 and 4 are in the same year? I thought this would have been their second year.
Oh, you're so
college.
right. Does that mean we skipped
Christmas?
a Christmas?
I guess we did.
Okay, fair enough. So Liz comes to surprise Caroline at her dorm room. She's decorated the room with Christmas stuff. Because Caroline obviously can't go back to Mystic Falls. She has also secretly invited Stefan over because she knows they're in a rough place. And as it turns out, Liz, big Steroline fan. So that's nice. Stefan helps Caroline put up lights for the decorations, and Caroline's like, I don't know why you think this will help, that you've been pretty shit to me for months. Like, anyone can hang up Christmas lights. It's a little bit, like, strangely hostile following the encounter they just had, But, you know, I guess we are still in this energy of it. So when Liz comes back with some hot chocolates for everybody, Stefan's like, I think I'm gonna go. Okay. I know it's not what's happening here, but there's this scene in the proposal. You know the proposal, Fadzai.
Yes. Although I haven't watched it in a while.
There is a scene in the third act where Betty White fakes a fainting spell so that Ryan Reynolds and his dad can mend fences. Which is not what's happening here, but it's what I thought about. Anyways, Liz starts to faint.
Gosh.
And Stefan rushes back into the room and catches her. So they then take her to the hospital. And it turns out she has cancer.
Hey, we just rushed right into that one, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Straight up, Liz has cancer, has known for weeks, and has not told Caroline as yet. They say glioblastoma? I think that's what they say. It's a brain tumor, and it's metastasizing to her spine, I believe is what they said.
Which I guess is shorthand for inoperable.
Yeah, they say a lot of like, chemo is not gonna work, operation's not gonna work, medicine's not gonna help, she's dying. Stefan has to break the news to Caroline. Oh, this is the scene, yes. When Stefan breaks the news to Caroline, she's like, okay, it's a brain tumor, we'll give her vampire blood. And Stefan's like, if vampire blood could cure cancer, we'd have heard something about that. Which I personally disagree, not with the fact of the matter, but with the assertion. But that's not important right now.
When Caroline brought it up, because I could see from her body language that, okay, she's not treating this as the devastating news it is. And I was like, let me guess, she's going to bring up vampire blood. And then she did. And I was like, this being a story on TV, obviously the solution can't be that simple. So I was thinking, so what is the explanation going to be? I guess vampire blood heals like wounds, like damaged tissue that's been, you know, bent out of shape or broken or cut or whatever. And I was like, yeah, there's some diseases that don't really manifest in that sort of like, oh, this is an injury sort of way. So it was funny when Caroline was like, yeah, we'll just use vampire blood. And I was like, to do what would the vampire blood be doing though, Caroline? Reversing the mutated cells that make a tumor? I don't like.
It's not unthinkable. Hey, listen, if vampire blood can reverse Jeremy's suicide attempt by pill, I think, you know, we're working with a lot of room here.
I thought the Jeremy thing was that he didn't take enough pills to die right away. So what little damage that I guess the pills would do in like a poison to like one's liver or whatever was now being repaired by the vampire blood.
Yeah.
That was still in him. Whereas I'm like, cancer? It's a physical thing that's there. So you can't just heal it away. Whereas like, I don't know, a damaged liver, I'm assuming would like, if you were to look at it on some sort of a level, whether microscopically or whatever, you would see like some sort of damage that can be repaired. I'm not a doctor. Don't take my word for this. But
So I mean, that does become the thing, right? Is why textually vampire blood cannot work on cancer because of the way cancer works, which we've discussed. But not everybody instinctually thinks of cancer that way, right? A lot of it is like, we know intuitively, whether you've studied cancer or not, that it destroys the body in some way. And so I don't think it's unthinkable to go, well, cancer's destroying a body, we'll use vampire blood to reverse the destruction that it's causing.
I guess. If I were Caroline, what I would have thought was, maybe we do whatever operation, you know, needs to be performed on this tumor that we consider inoperable and use vampire blood simultaneously to heal the damage that would be lethal in a normal surgical procedure.
Yes, which is a bit of a loophole in the storyline when you think about it. But alas, we need Liz to be dying terminally, so.
It was so sad, because I was like, spoilers for anyone who hasn't finished Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 5, but
yeah.
When Buffy's mom had a tumor, thankfully it wasn't malignant, it was benign.
Yeah.
So they were able to remove it without worrying that, oh, there's still cancer like in her body elsewhere. So firstly I was like, oh, another thing pulled from previous vampire works, but done in a more devastating way. But also I was like, Liz was the last parent standing. Is this the season that's the end of childhood forever? We no longer have grown-ups to take care of us?
Yeah. It really is the like, this is it. You guys are on your own now and you have to fend for yourselves, which sucks. Especially since they've grown so close, especially recently. I was gonna say the other option that doesn't come up because nobody cares about this storyline outside of excusing Damon for everything he's ever done is Augustine. Because Augustine had enough experimental notes to have cured a congenital heart disease in Miss Haley Kiyoko Megan King, which is one of the things you listed for Zai, where it's like, this is not a poison, this is not an injury, this is like a chronic thing that they healed using vampire blood experimentation. So it's like, hey, if that had been a thread we'd followed narratively, that could have helped.
Yeah.
But, alas.
Also, I'm like, Silas, I don't know how, but I know you had something to do with this. You attacked Liz back in season 4.
And it must be your business causing trouble here. After Stefan says that about the vampire blood, Caroline's like, all right, chemo, operations, like surely there is something we can do here. But Stefan assures her the doctor have said it's terminal. That's when it starts to sink in for Caroline. As you said, she was treating it as though it's not that serious, and then it sinks in, and she starts sobbing, and Stefan is holding her as she is. And to find out on Christmas.
And I'm like, I still live in the Vampire Diaries universe. Esther and Klaus Michelson have jumped into other people's bodies. If you think I'm giving up this easily, you're crazy.
You know, there must be a way. Loopholes on loopholes they love to do. I guess except when they don't. Caroline then spends the next episode taking care of her mom in hospital. We're pretending Damon and Liz Forbes are still friends, so he's also here. Which is why when Caroline tries to sell her mother on her plan to give her vampire blood, Damon's there to be like, actually that's dumb, and you're dumb for thinking that'll work. Because I, someone who didn't even know werewolves existed until last year, have never heard of this working.
Also, I'm like, Damon, unlike Stefan, who worked with like dying soldiers when Lexi was taking him through the 12-step plan, you have never cared about human life. How would you know what vampire blood does and doesn't heal? Also, Caroline, don't you still have Klaus's phone number? I'm sure the 1,000-year-old vampire could have come up with some way to help you if you'd gone to help
ever
him.
A goddamn time
you
to
know?
call Klaus. Those New Orleans witches could have fixed cancer. Let me tell you something. That ancestral well, they would have been like, cancer? Pfft.
Yeah, those New Orleans witches had a hex that triggered whatever physical, real-life chemical conditions were causing insanity.
Right.
In Father
K.
Because it couldn't be undone. It couldn't be siphoned. It was like, well, it's stuck here. And even when he died and came back as a vampire, it was still there.
Still had it. Witch who hexed him? Dead. Dead in the ground. That hex is still on him. New Orleans witches don't play. Anyways, Damon leaves because obviously he wasn't here to help. So Caroline takes her mother home to Mystic Falls because at this point, Kai has sucked up the anti-magic bubble so everyone can go home. Stefan has been at their house setting stuff up so that Liz can be more comfortable and watch her stories in the living room. He says they moved her entertainment system to the living room. Caroline gives her a friend's box set because, of course, while she goes to Duke University to get a second opinion on Liz from a leading expert in oncology. Stefan goes with Caroline because all the Sarah drama is happening right now, so he's going to go check on her. Caroline takes her mom's files to this expert. She's asking about like clinical trials that she wants to put her mother in for, and she compels the woman to like cut away any red tape that might prevent that from happening. But when the doctor looks the files over and gives her honest opinion, it's, listen, your doctors are doing everything they can. There's really not much to do at this point. And she even tells Caroline that she has a patient in nearly identical condition to Liz, that she herself has had to just resign to making him comfortable until the end comes for him. And so Caroline's like, all right, can I see this patient that you've been looking at? She goes to this guy, Colin's hospital room, and she reads over his file and is like, damn, what an awful situation you're in, because there's also no next of kin listed on his file. And she tells this man, who's unconscious by the way, that for her mom, she's the next of kin. She's all that Liz has. She then pulls back her sleeve, bites her wrist, and feeds this dying black man vampire blood.
Caroline, not again.
I tried to say it. She keeps ending up in these positions. It's Rachel! Colin wakes up and starts running around. He's like, I've never had this much energy in my life, talking to some orderly who's just like, yes, this is very lovely. I'm happy for you, buddy. Caroline's showing off her work to Stefan, and she's like, look, this is good news. And Stefan's like, I don't know. I don't trust it, girly pop.
Yeah, he's like, it feels too easy. And she's like, well, yeah, like when we heal someone from a knife wound or whatever, it's literally magic.
Right. It is easy because it's always easy with vampire blood. And he's like, okay. And she's like, look, I believe this will work. So I need to go home to my mom right now. That's the dispute I take with all of this. Leave alone all the other stuff of like, was this gonna work on cancer? My gripe is you stay and you observe the patient to make sure that there are no long-lasting effects.
The scientific process is what's bothering
Precisely.
you.
If you're gonna experiment on a dying black man, at least stick around to see the effects of the experiment. You don't stand there for half an hour and go, job done, and leave.
She just wanted confirmation bias.
Precisely.
She was like, first glance, it looks like what I wanted to happen has happened. That's good enough for me. Goodbye.
I'm truncating the data. I'm leaving out the outliers from the experiment, which is a thing that people very often did in engineering.
It's all these things that have been debunked now. Stockholm Syndrome and the whole alpha wolf in a wolf pack thing. Maybe it's good that she didn't go into STEM.
This is the thing, is that in season 5, she was presented to have a knack for it. So, like, this is confusing to me.
Nah, she wanted to bend things to what was the most comfortable interpretation. Go be an art then. It's fine. That's okay.
That's like the whole gig. On the way back to her home, Stefan tells her about Sarah Salvatore, who he's never told anyone about before. Not even Elena. Technically, that's because Sarah Salvatore didn't exist at the time, but that is what the truth is now. I'll acknowledge it. She's like, oh, that's so nice that you've been taking care of her all this time. I promise I'll keep it a secret. Don't worry. And she thanks him for helping with her mom and for being with her while they go through this. She's like, thanks for not treating me like a crazy person while I try to sort all this out. And as she's talking, Stefan reaches out to take her hand and holds it in both of his. And he rubs his thumb on the back of it. And she's like, so, thank you. Just really like, okay, it's happening. It's that meme from The Office where Steve Carell stops running around. So she goes into her house and tells her mother about the second opinion. Liz is like, look, that's one doctor's opinion. And Caroline says, we can't wait for more people to weigh in on this. You're dying, babe. And I've got something that I now know works. So she starts describing how she healed Mr. Man at the hospital. And she says she wants her mother to stay alive for all the things that they're still meant to do, even if she knows that that's selfish. And then Liz starts crying and she's like, she wants that too. As Caroline goes to give Liz some of her blood, we're like cutting back to Colin back at the hospital in Duke, who's in his bed looking really gray. He starts coughing up, gets up and throws up blood against the like glass wall of his room. Then next you see him, he's crawling on the floor out of his room and into the hallway and crying out for help. And then we cut back to Liz Forbes drinking this vampire blood and smiling at Caroline, and it's like, oh no. Next episode, and this was crazy. Colin has come all the way to Caroline's house from Duke. He knows her name, and he also knows that she's the one who did this to him. Which I was like, what? And then Stefan comes over to help Caroline and is like, but you compelled him to forget. Which I'm like, okay, well and good, but before compelling him, you gave him your address? How did he find you? I still have not been able to answer that question. Her mom wasn't at Duke. There's no personal details of theirs. How did he know they were even from Mystic Falls? I have so many questions about this. But Stefan puts together that he must be a vampire now because... Actually, it's weird, the order of events. He asked Caroline if his mom signed the house into her name. And Caroline's like, I don't know. Maybe she's been running around saying she needs to put her affairs in order, so possibly. And then Stefan pulls a curtain for sunlight to come in and it starts to burn Colin a little bit. And he's like... okay, he's a vampire. So the compulsion wore away. And also that means he died after you fed him your blood.
Which I'm like, so the science of this... if you'll allow me to be Dr. Wes Maxfield for a moment.
Please, always. You're far more exciting.
Vampire blood heals, which is basically just cellular regeneration. So... it healed the cells that were being damaged by the cancerous cells but also supercharged the cancerous cells themselves, which then just rapidly killed him in the matter of a few hours.
Precisely that. In fact, when they take him to the hospital and Joe runs tests, they see he still has the cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's been enhanced by blood. She describes it as stage 10 cancer, which is not a thing that exists because people die at like 4.
Yep. That's when he's like, I can hear the tumors growing in my head. And I'm like, oh yeah, heightened vampire senses. This sounds awful.
When he said that, I got up from my seat and ran around my room. The thought of that is unnerving.
Gosh.
He is immortal and still has crazy cancer and is constantly in pain and can hear his tumors growing. It's so bad. We've discussed this before, but this is where Delena, who are now like an inseparable tag team, come and shit all over Caroline and Stefan for this because Liz is their mom, actually. And these characters were dumb bitches for trying to save her life. Caroline, of course, starts to spiral. She's blaming herself. And Stefan's assuring her, listen, you were trying to help and you were being optimistic. That is what your mother is going to need now that we're in this situation. Then they hear Colin in his room crying out, and they go in and find him stabbing himself with a broken IV stand, trying to die, and finding he cannot die because he doesn't know you need to do it with wood. That's when he says constant pain, he can hear his tumors growing. They're like, stop, please, we can help you. And he rushes to Caroline and says, if you want to help me die. It's so awful. And then Damon shows up and rips out his heart, so that's sorted. So we move away from that.
Ooh, theory. If the other side still existed and you died as a cancerous vampire and then we brought you back in corporeal form, would you still have the cancer or would you be back to your default self but as a vampire?
So this depends on something we have discussed but never resolved regarding the nature of how they come back from the other side, body, soul, spirit, everything. Entirely new. Because the initial thing we said was, okay, you had posited that you are a new body because we were talking about Elena and how she dies with Damon stupidly to kill the travelers and then comes back as a new person. And you were like, okay, well, at the very least, you have a new body that wasn't violated by Catherine, right? So that's great. But then I forget which character it is who crosses the anti-magic border spell post coming back that way from the other side and dying the way that they died, and we were like, so is it a temporal copy of who you were prior? Like, how is it?
Yes, because Alaric still has the heart injury that
Yes.
Esther would have given him when she stabbed him.
Exactly, which is like, if it's a new body, why would he have that injury? So it must be a copy of your body that existed prior to your death. So would you still have the cancer afterwards? I don't know.
Gosh, so many questions, because again, these are injuries that aren't like your own cells creating a cancerous growth in you. It's like, oh, Stefan and Damon's gunshot wounds. Oh, but Enzo still has his consumption.
Tuberculosis.
He has his TB.
Yes.
And that's a virus?
This is not my stem.
I've
Hold on.
forgotten. I can't remember whether it's a virus or whether it's like a bacterial infection.
It's an infectious disease caused by bacteria that most often affects the lungs. So bacteria, I guess.
Okay, so the bacteria comes back with Enzo.
Which is crazy, right?
Either that or the damaged lungs come back with Enzo.
Right. But damaged lungs can be healed by vampire blood.
I guess it's that your new body is a vampire body made from your old body, which had damaged lungs.
That's true. But then does that mean, it doesn't matter because he doesn't need them to breathe. Maybe. Because they do breathe, so maybe he does. Does he just have TB lungs as a vampire?
I guess it has to be your temporal thing. The other doing of the magic.
But no, now this is before coming through to the other side. Enzo, who dies in 1903 and becomes a vampire, does he spend 100 years with TB lungs?
No, he spends 100 years with vampire lungs that are healed.
Okay.
Then dies. When he is reconstituted from the other side.
They're very briefly TB lungs again until his vampirism heals.
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
And if he were to cross the border, which he does, it does happen, he starts coughing up as though he had TB.
Yes.
Okay, temporal copy then.
Temporal copy.
So he'd come back with the cancer. I guess. That's so awful.
The whole resurrection from the other side thing is so confusing, and it's the thing that makes it all the more confusing is that Elena looks at her burnt corpse and swipes her daylight ring off her own finger. And I'm like, so the ring didn't go with you, which means everything that exists now is definitely some sort of copy of you. It's not
reconstituted, right?
So bizarre. And I'm like, so if it's not your original body, why are the human ailments that killed you in your human life in your old body now coming back with you? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It might be because the ring is magical that it didn't go through. Maybe anything mundane like your physical body and then your clothes, that can be reconstituted or copied. But the ring can't be copied. Unless it's a Gemini prison world, because the Gemini are cool.
Yes. If it hadn't been for all the anti-magic bubble is taking you back through your human death into vampirism, we would have just said, it's your ghost being made flesh in a brand new you.
Constituted from energy from the other side. Which is why the other side starts collapsing, because they start using it up to make people's bodies. Actually, hold on. I think we cracked this.
So it's a new you.
Fashioning new bodies from the realm that is, it's like pieces of the other side made their new bodies. That would be so cool.
I guess. Yeah, because Marcos is the first person to come back. And they overwhelm Bonnie by putting a bunch of dead travelers through her so that he can slip in and go the other direction.
Wild.
Gosh, the metaphysics of Vampire Diaries would be so interesting to study in a magic school. Somebody write a magic school book about this.
Yeah, you can go to Salvatore Young and the Gifted. I think that's... maybe that's something they care about there. Caroline starts picking flowers for the memorial service. And Stefan is like, girl, your mom is still alive. Let's prioritize, please. Like, okay, you messed up with the vampire blood, but now what are you gonna do? And when Caroline is like, I can't even face her now after what's happened, Stefan is like, listen, I dillied and dallied as a kid when my mom was dying of TB, and then I did not get to see her before she died because my dad sent her away. So, go be with your mom while you still can. So she goes, but by the time she gets there, Damon and Elena have busted Kai out to siphon out the vampire blood in Liz's system so that he can then go kill Luke in a twin merge. This also gives Liz a heart attack, and Caroline gets there while Elena, a first-year medical student, is giving her CPR after the time of death has already been called. So Caroline pulls Elena out of the way, goes to hold her mother, who is now dead. She's sobbing, and while she's crying over her mother, there's a memory of them intercutting, and it's Liz who's going on a trip of some kind and is like, it's time for me to go, which is like, all right, show, very on the nose. Goddamn.
Subtlety.
Caroline standing by a window staring out like really Blair Witch style, and it's like, what the hell is happening, guys? She's like, you don't want to say goodbye to your mom? And when Caroline turns around, she has her vampire face and blood is smeared all over, and that's when Liz wakes up. Which I don't fully understand the ending of that, because I think it's from Liz's perspective, not Caroline's.
Oh, I thought maybe Caroline was in her head, or it was like a manifestation of Caroline's guilt for trying to use vampire blood to save her.
It would make more sense that way, yeah. It just is framed as though that was something Liz was seeing, and that's what jump-started her heart, I guess, because again, she's post-time of death.
Maybe that's what Caroline did. She gave her a jump scare in the dream space as she was going into the light, and then that made her heart start again.
It would have to be of her own psyche, though, because Caroline does not yet know that vampires have mind powers, which is also crazy.
She doesn't know that yet?
She doesn't, because Stefan teaches her in the next episode.
Gosh.
Anyways, Liz wakes up. Once she's stable, Caroline starts to apologize for what she did, and Liz is like, shut your goddamn mouth. Stop beating yourself up. I'm not mad. They also discuss that Liz has indeed put the house in Caroline's name, which is so dangerous. Caroline's a vampire. Now anyone can come in.
I guess Matt can't own all the property in town, and they don't have any of the humans they trust.
Why can't Matt own all the property in town? If anything, I think that's the smartest thing they could do. He's immortal, as we've seen, through no supernatural means. So he's the best person to sign your property over to. He can't die.
Well, I mean, he can very well die in universe. He doesn't have the ring anymore because the other side is gone and the ring doesn't work without the other side. But I guess, I don't know, maybe how many houses can you own before someone in the government starts to say, your taxes or something like that?
Clearly none, if you're rich enough. You got the money, you can just do it. And this town has the money. Also, who in the town is gonna talk shit to the founding families?
I don't know, they'll look at Matt and they'll be like, how did you swindle all these people out of their houses? You know, you were all buddy with Tyler Lockwood, then he gave you his mansion, and then you dated Caroline Forbes, and then her divorced mother signed the house over to you.
What a brilliant idea.
It's like Caroline went away to college and you put the moves on her middle-aged, lonely mother, tricked her into signing it over to you instead of her only living child.
He bats those baby blue eyes and they all just swoon at him and he strikes.
You know what, Matt? Get yours back. In the end,
Listen.
it's you know what it is? Your least favorite thing. It's Saltburn, and in the end, Matt
it's Saltburn, but better because Matt's actually poor. So, actually...
And Matt ends up owning all of the founding family's home.
As he should. Stefan comes by with coffee while Liz and Caroline are talking, which earlier Caroline was fighting the machine trying to get coffee, so that's why he's come by with some. Liz is like, Caroline, please, can you go check if they have decaf since I'm not allowed to have coffee anymore? But she lingers just outside the room to hear Liz asking Stefan to help Caroline after she's gone, in terms of moving on and processing and all that. Then next episode, it's Bonnie's birthday. She's still stuck in the prison world, so everyone's being like, boo-hoo us. Caroline and Stefan go look for this bear that she stole from Bonnie and buried in the woods while they were children because she needs a distraction from her mom dying, so you know. It's wild. Throughout this, they're being quite flirty, but also the circumstances are like very macabre. But I think I like it. Stefan starts to be like really insufferable. He's like constantly poking. He's also drinking whiskey the whole time. And you start to be like, dude, what's happening here? This is kind of wild. And then when Caroline starts getting pissed at him, he locks in. You truly see in his face. And it's like, oh, okay. He's trying to make her angry so she can stop distracting herself from the problems and actually face what she's feeling. And so she shoves him and he's like, did that make you feel better? And she's like, no. And he's like, then try it again. So she shoves him again, and then at some point she picks up a shovel and whacks him over the head, and then he falls to the ground. Then she swipes the whiskey from his hand that he's been drinking, and he swipes her leg, and she falls to the ground next to him, and he's like, felt good, didn't it? Caroline's like, maybe a little. So that's lovely. Just, you know, back to quintessential Stefan and Caroline stuff. We love to see it. It's all very sweet. They do actually find the bear, which I wasn't expecting.
It's in very good condition for something that's been buried for like a decade.
From 14 years ago, it's like, is that not cotton? Cotton biodegrades, my love. It's organic. What is this bear made of?
Polyester bear.
Polyester bear that would have survived a nuclear apocalypse, I suppose. She accidentally rips off its head, and then she starts laughing, and of course that then turns into some crying, and Stefan pulls her in. After this, they set up Caroline's dad's cabin for her mom. It's sort of like a palliative care situation so she can live out the rest of her days. There's a fun moment where they're unpacking, and Stefan's phone rings while he's holding boxes, so he asks Caroline to fish it from his pocket. It takes a little too long for her to actually do it, so they're just like very close to each other in intimate space. It's her mom calling, and once Stefan has gone inside with the boxes, Caroline brings up that she heard her mother ask him to look after her. So that's why they're together right now. And Liz is like, I'm sure that's not the only reason he's there. Then Stefan is fixing a light on the front porch in a cutoff t-shirt, which thank you to anyone who made that decision. It had been a while. I think you've said it before. It might have been I don't remember what episode it was. But like after enough time, they stop sexualizing Stefan and it's like, well, damn. And I guess now that this has started up, they started up again because we need to remind you he's an object of desire.
Yes. I mean, frankly, I remember there was either an interview or some question thing that Paul Wesley had answered because the fans are like, how come we don't get shirtless scenes from you anymore at a certain point? And he was like, yeah, the thing about those is like, I was going to gym a lot more back then. And then I stopped. So it was like, I don't really feel like it. And I'm like, how dare you deprive us of shirtless scenes just because you assume we need to see a six-pack that's like MCU sculpted?
I assure you, I don't. In fact, in a lot of scenarios, I prefer not to. So, but it's the CW, so. Caroline, because she comes out and she stops to look and is like, ha ha ha, anyways. And then she's like, here's my pink bike from when I was 5 years old and being played by McKenna Grace. Isn't this cute?
Sabrina!
I love how McKenna Grace for a period of time was playing every blonde girlie's younger version. Because she's also Captain Marvel's younger version.
She
which
is.
great. So yeah, Caroline tells Stefan that he doesn't have to be here, like, with her. If he's got somewhere he'd rather be, it's okay. Stefan immediately like, I don't. And then they're both like, oh, okay. They're just smiling at each other. It's a lot of that in these couple of episodes where it's like, we're kind of frozen in this spot here, waiting to like move to a new position, but your mom is dying of cancer, so this is not the best time for a relationship to develop.
I mean, you did ask for better obstacles to be placed in front of them, so...
Honestly, maybe I regret my decision, but this is a far better obstacle than the first arc of the show. It is much more narratively fruitful to me to be like, we clearly like each other, but there is a huge life thing going on at the moment, and it's kind of wrecking my whole shit, so I don't know if I have time for this. The episode is mostly Stefan, like, taking some weight off of Caroline's shoulders and getting her to, like, accept that there will be some things in life she can't control. There's a moment on the porch as, like, the sun's setting where he takes a hand and he's like, well, hey, if there's anyone who could control death, it's you, Caroline Forbes. Which, that's cute. She then tells Stefan she knows her mom asked him to look after her, and he's like, that's not why I'm here. Caroline's like, then why? And he says, because you're my friend, and because I know what it's like to lose a mother. Then he reaches out and brushes some of her hair out of her face, and he says, because when you told me you hated me, it was pretty much the worst thing I'd heard in a long time. Caroline's like, I think we both know I never really hated you. And the music starts to rise a little bit, and the two of them are moving towards each other. And then they come together in a kiss as the sun glints right behind their faces. It's so good. As far as first kisses go, of course, in the background, dying mom of cancer. But visually, physically, as far as first kisses go, this is one of the best ones in the show. The like sunlight is framing their face. It's very soft and intimate, which I expect of two people who have known each other a long time and have been friends a long time, sort of transitioning into something new. It's not gonna be like, you know, in the arms of the ocean, grabbing furiously at each other outside the Motel 6. It's gonna be sunlight framing your face, On the Nature of Daylight playing. That's not the song that's playing, but it's in my head.
I mean, when Elena had their first kiss, Elena's parents were already dead, but,
Meaning what?
I don't know! She had the decency to wait until her parents were dead before she fell in love with Stefan.
Oh no!
I'm being silly. I know, Caroline. I am Caroline, I'm an actor who didn't get the Oscar, and I'm saying, no, but Olivia Colman, truly, you are so talented, and you deserve this, and it's an honor just to be nominated. Well done. If I had to lose to someone, I'm glad it was you.
Listen, I had mourned Stelena long before this, so not even and truly the thing, in a strange way, Delena helped me because they are being so insufferable this season. So I truly had, there's nothing in my mind or heart that was like, if Elena ever comes back and is like, actually I realized I've always loved you, Stefan, I don't think I would have been down with that anymore at this point in the story.
I would have been like, Elena, you waited until you fell in love with Caroline so that you could...
Kind of crazy.
You could overshadow her one last time.
Kind of thought we left this behind in junior year, Elena, but okay. I guess you gotta be that girl.
I think because I was in denial, I fell for every little trail of breadcrumbs they left. With the whole fated doppelgangers thing, I fell for that. Even when I don't think they were trying to leave behind a trail of breadcrumbs, I was still convincing myself it was there.
When they have that meeting at Savannah where she goes to go speak to him and they're in the bar with the fake proposal.
Oh yes, that was sweet. That though, I think I read that as, oh, okay, we're just friends. We're amicable exes now. Fine. fine. But I think briefly when the whole erased memory thing became a plot, I was like, oh, maybe without her memory, this will be an excuse for her to fall for Stefan again. And then even when she gets it back, she'll be torn between them again. And then maybe she'll choose Stefan.
Now that you've brought that up, I'm so curious in her period where her memories were erased, because as we know, when Elena takes the cure for vampirism, or she gets all her memories back. So she does eventually come back. But in the period where she didn't have the memories of loving Damon, why did she think she and Stefan broke up?
Who knows? I don't know if they bring it up.
They don't, because that would be a conversation to have and then realize we've written ourselves in a circle.
Maybe in the altered retcon timeline that exists only in her mind, she and Stefan broke up because he just couldn't handle her vampire self.
But that was because of the sire bond, which was because of Damon, which ideally is erased from her memory.
But I guess in these fabricated memories, it's now that no, she was just bad at being a vampire in general. And Stefan couldn't handle it. Or worse, that he just didn't like her as a vampire.
Oh my, the fact that this lobotomy actually makes that real makes me so mad.
Pre-lobotomy Elena and post-lobotomy Elena.
Truly post-lobotomy Elena in this era.
Wait, I always forget that the cure undid the compulsion. How does that work?
I don't know. I've never known. When we were doing the Elena episode and I noted that down, you exclaimed, what? Because it's insane. And we never came up with an answer. And I don't think I was invested in coming up with one at that point, because who cares?
Doesn't make any sense. Why would the cure for vampirism in a person's singular individual body undo another vampire's compulsion on the...
Right.
What? I don't
know.
Unless the story is treating the nature of an original vampire compelling a normal vampire as being different from an original vampire compelling a human. So therefore, when her vampire brain turned back into a human brain, the compulsion went away.
Sure. Why not? Whatever explanation they come up with, sure. That's what happened.
Wow.
Across town, Liz is now properly dying, so they have to run to the hospital to go see her. Caroline sees her unresponsive and starts crying, saying that she didn't get to say goodbye. Later, Stefan comes in and she's like, I should have been with her. I don't even remember the last thing I said to her. Stefan then reminds her she can still have a last goodbye, and he helps her go into her mother's memory of her teaching how to ride a bike. So this is the moment where Stefan tells her, you can go into her memories. And she's like, we can do that? And I was like, surely it's come up in the 2 years she's been a vampire.
She's been a vampire
surely
for
someone
3
told
years,
her.
hasn't she? Because she gets turned
In season two, which is the back half of the first year. You're right, it's been 3 years.
Gosh.
And surely she knows that's what Damon did to her when he got her to come back and let her out of the Salvatore prison, even though it was in a way that doesn't really come back.
And there's been so many other like plot relevant moments
Instances.
where like Damon stealing the information of the white oak like saplings wood from Rebecca's mind, and Sage stealing it from his.
Elena knows that Damon went into Rose's mind when she was being euthanized.
You know,
like it's been done.
Wild. I guess Caroline was always in the B plot, so no one ever told her.
It's true. So yeah, Stefan helps her go into this memory of her mother teaching how to ride a bike, and it's little McKenna Grace pedaling for her life, bless. She has no training wheels and she's in distress. And Liz is like, keep going, baby, I won't let go. Her hands are already off the bike. Caroline's like, I'm not ready. And Liz is like, it's okay, I'm right behind you. But she's just standing and Caroline is beginning to pedal away. And she stands there watching her. And then Liz flatlines in the hospital. And Caroline is sobbing. I think she turns over her shoulder to tell everyone who's gathered that she's gone. As far as parents' deaths, I think this is the one that hit me the most of the parents and parental figures we see die in this show. Because it's Liz Forbes, man. She's such a pillar of the community, a pillar of the story. And how far Caroline and Liz have come since we saw them in the first episode is just... yeah, it's rough.
Yeah. Also because, as is often the case in these stories with supernatural elements, it's like, yeah, no bad guy or curse or anything got her. It was just an ordinary mundane disease. There's no one to blame.
Just cancer.
And And Elena's parents, who also die in a mundane way, like, at least we don't see that. That's, like, the prologue.
True.
That's, like, before the story begins. Everybody else has been, like, murdered by someone. Both Mayor Lockwood's, Aunt Jenna, Uncle John had to sacrifice himself to save Elena.
Yeah. It's not relevant to Caroline, but the Elena one, it's like, on her last day, Liz Forbes was investigating. I think we talked about it, because it was a mysterious accident. Her and her parents going off the bridge. They were always like, why? Were you avoiding something? Did you hit something? Like, why did you swerve? There were no skid marks. So you just turned your car and drove off. You know, you didn't even hit the brakes. And I still think they never figured it out. So a mystery for the ages.
It was the writer's quill just pulling them in that direction. They couldn't see it because they're inside the story.
Caroline starts planning her mom's funeral service in one day. She rallies all the vampires and Matt together and is like, listen, we've got superpowers. We can do the work of 5 days in one day. Let's get to it.
Which, I mean, there are some cultures that have same-day burials and funerals. So, Caroline, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
If they can do it, why not you?
Islam is the one I know for sure. There are Islamic organizations that are specifically catered to making sure all the funeral arrangements are carried out that same day, which I've always thought is very interesting. Elena and Caroline go casket shopping. Elena's guiding Caroline on how to respond to people's condolences. She's like, you gotta categorize them, give a stock standard one for acquaintances and strangers, and then you build up as you get to more closer people.
Because who's had more practice than Elena Gilbert, I guess?
Precisely that. Has been to like 4 funerals for her family members. Caroline then blurts out that she and Stefan kissed. And she's like, I need to know how he feels about it. Elena says, girl, deal with that tomorrow. We are planning a funeral. And Caroline's like, I need to know today. So she goes and finds Stefan before the service. They're both already dressed up. Liz is 10 meters away in an open casket. Caroline's like, hey, can we define the relationship? Haha. Stefan's like, yeah, I want to talk about this, but maybe once we've gotten through today, the funeral of your mom who just died. And the thing about this moment is that when Caroline hears this, she reads it as, oh, Stefan doesn't want to give me bad news on the day we bury my mother. Which is important for something that's about to happen. They have the service. All the Mystic Falls cops do the spinny salute.
Oh, yeah, they exist. I forgot that she had a whole police...
Deputies on deputies.
Well, not a precinct, because their town is too small. A police office? A police...
Yeah, like a sheriff's office.
Yeah, a sheriff's station. A whole squad of police behind her.
They're like, yeah, serve to the nation... And her casket is covered in an American flag. They don't do the spinny gun, but they do spinny their bodies, which I always find interesting. Caroline sings Not Amazing Grace, which I thought she sang at her mom's funeral. It's a rendition of a song called Go in Peace by Sam Baker. It is gorgeous and very sad.
Now, why is Candace always getting to sing?
Yeah.
I mean, she's
not a single song.
Yeah,
beautiful voice.
Like, if you're gonna do a cast show off, why is it always the same cast person who sings?
We've got like 3 singers on this cast. Let's have them all out there. Enzo gets to sing, and it's like Enzo before Bonnie? Get me out of here.
Vampire Diaries forced musical episode when?
Listen, that's what they were missing in those later seasons. Is a random forced... Maybe the cast was like, we don't wanna... But if the Grey's Anatomy could do it...
We had sirens! That would have been the time to do it!
Imagine the sirens force everyone into a musical episode? Oh my god. We're always sitting on gold for this show. Then at the after tears, Caroline leaves a bit early and Elena's like, oh, okay, cool, I'll walk you home. And Caroline's like, don't worry, I'll be fine. And she gives Elena a hug and says, thanks for everything you did today, Elena. I'll never forget it. Which is something you hear and don't think too much about immediately. Mm-hmm. But later, Elena comes by her house and is like, oh, you're not fine, girl. And in fact, I've clocked your little breadcrumbs that you've been dropping unintentionally. You've been saying you just need to get through today because you're not planning on feeling tomorrow. You're about to flip your switch. She tries to talk Caroline out of this, but Caroline's like, listen, I had a talk with Damon at the beginning of the episode, and even Elena in this moment is like, and you're gonna listen to Damon? which is crazy. That's her man's. Caroline's like, he said today is gonna be the easiest part of this. The hard part's gonna be tomorrow. Tomorrow's gonna be worse. And Caroline's like, I can't do worse than what I'm feeling now. She says, it hurts so bad, I can't breathe. And in fact, why do you, Elena, get to do no humanity and I don't? Especially when I'm in far more control of my vampirism than you've ever been of yours.
And
Lena's like, all right, you're emotional, I get it. I'm not going to take that personally. And she's like, learn from my mistakes, girl. That's the worst thing I ever did. Don't fall into that trap. And she goes to hug Caroline and is like, we can get through this, but you don't need to do this. Caroline is like sobbing, and then suddenly she locks in and snaps Elena's neck. Oof. She looks down at her body and she's like, I don't think that's a call you get to make. And Caroline has flipped her switch.
And you know what? Everybody else got to do it. All the other vampires on the show, except I guess Tyler, who's technically a hybrid, but is vampiric.
Yeah. Which is her argument, right? She's like, why not me? Domiti.
I think doesn't even Enzo do it in season 8? Or
Yes. No, in season 5. In the season he's introduced.
Oh.
Very briefly.
Wow. In real time or in the flashback?
In real time. It's after, because he was trying to find Maggie, right? And then the travelers tell him Maggie died. And he thinks Stefan killed her, but he finds out it's his best friend, Damon. So he's like, I have nothing left.
Gosh, even Enzo beat her to flipping the switch.
Yep. So why not? Go for it, girl. Enter Caroline's No Humanity era, which relatively fun for a little bit, I have to say. I don't dislike it as much as Elena's one.
Really? Because you don't like Elena's one?
We've had this conversation in the Elena episode. Elena's just like, you said it and I appreciate that, like, she gets to like cut loose. I think it's when she snapped that waitress's spine, and also she was being mean to Caroline, who I'm just like, okay, Caroline's always been your corner. I understand your emotions are off, but goddamn. She was fighting Bonnie at any given opportunity for nothing even. I was just like, I'm not having a good time. And they could not contain her. They simply couldn't.
I was enjoying seeing her be a menace. Is the thing. I was like, oh, she's so bad now, but I'm here for it. And she's bad in a different way than Catherine is. She even gags Catherine when the comparison is made between her and Catherine.
That is the episode that I appreciate is American Gothic, when we get to contrast her and Catherine, and Rebecca's along for the ride. That's my favorite episode. But in general, I was just like, I need us to get out of this. I think it's also because I was coming off all the Cyberpunk nonsense that beyond that point nobody cared about. So I was just like, where are we?
Oh.
And why do I need to be here? But this one I like because of the twist of it, which you're not expecting. As we've discussed, the conceit of the switch that these vampires have means these actors get to have some fun playing just like absolutely callous, entirely nihilist people. Just like completely contrary to who they are. Usually. Sometimes they're exactly the same and we pretend. And Caroline is being absolutely awful to everyone. She barely cares that Bonnie's back because Bonnie crawled her way out of a prison world and is back now. But she has been snatch, eat, erasing people because she doesn't want to deal with the governance of like straight up slaughter. She's like, guys, the way y'all go about this thing seems like a lot of work that I don't want to deal with because I still want to go to school and do my drama major and have fun.
And she doesn't want to have to be fighting with all of them.
Precisely. So she's like, instead of dealing with all y'all's bullshit trying to stop me from living life, let's reach a compromise. Give me 1 year of no humanity where I promise no one will die. And at the end of it, I will voluntarily come right back. No harm, no mess, no fuss. And they're like, that's all? And she's like, that's all. I even stocked my dorm fridge full of blood bags because sometimes I just don't give a shit to go and find somebody and eat. You know, I've got work to do. I've got studying. And I find that so fascinating as compared to every other character who just decides to go, balls to the wall, I don't care about anything. Caroline's like, yeah, but also, no.
I guess Elena didn't kill anyone until she got irritated that they weren't leaving her alone. And she was like, okay, because I know you value human life and this will affect you, or maybe this will make you stop seeing me as the Elena that you're trying to save, I'm gonna murder this woman. She'd clearly been eating people, but she wasn't killing them. So I guess not having your humanity doesn't immediately make you homicidal. Stefan is a ripper, so that's why whenever he flips his switch, he's like, okay, time to go kill.
And Damon and Enzo are just like that.
Yeah,
so.
they're just horrible people who kill even when they're in their best moods.
So maybe the switch we're always coming to the conclusion that, like, the switch doesn't largely change who you are. It just kind of, like, dims some of your inhibitions, you know?
It's just a drug. It's a narcotic.
So they're like, okay, this is Bonnie and Elena she's talking to, and they're like, all right, cool, this seems fine. Then Caroline's like, of course, if anyone tries anything to flip my switch back on, then I will become your worst nightmare. I feel like that goes without saying. And they're like, okay, yeah, fine. Everyone is pretty okay with this, because they're like, yeah, it's been some time and it seems to be going well. Like, she is maintaining exactly what she said she would. Except for Stefan, who insists that Caroline could still snap and kill someone. And then she'll spiral about that after she has to come back. He says this, but really, it's because he's feeling guilty, I guess, for not saying the exact right thing to keep her from flipping her switch. I don't know. It's very unhelpful energy.
Because I'm like, she might snap in what way? She's told you the only thing that would irritate her. The worst thing that could happen to her has already happened. That's why we're here.
Right.
So what would make her snap?
What would make her so upset to the point that she's going to break the pattern she clearly... Because she grabs Liam at the beginning of the episode and starts eating him and almost kills him and is like, I almost killed you, but like... Then I thought about the outcome of that and I was like, ew, I don't want to deal with that. So actually, here you go. Don't remember what happened. And that's what leads her to that conclusion. So she's been in the scenario where she could have done the thing that Stefan's suggesting and didn't. Because it's seemingly not in her nature even as a, like... no humanity vampire. So Stefan's just guilty. That's all it is.
You know, it strikes me, if there were a time to bring back Klaus for a random quickie, now would have been it.
I mean, they kind of do that because she flirts with Enzo, but because Enzo is a Puritan, he's like, well, now it doesn't mean anything to me because you're not Caroline.
I'm sure Klaus would have said the same nonsense.
So Stefan goes to find her at a Whitmore party and she's got... I don't want to say she's got white girl braids.
Oh yes, she does the expository hairstyle change.
Yeah, she has it twisted up in a way that it isn't usually. It's very like Christina Aguilera or Britney Spears from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I was like, I don't know if it's working for you, Caroline.
I don't think it is.
Maybe we could have tried something else. I know Elena got that streak, so maybe dyeing it would have felt too, derivative. But there's lots of other styles we could have done.
Yeah. If anything, how often does Caroline tie her hair up? That would have been a fun kind of change. Or maybe she gets an undercut.
Sometimes she has a bit of like a ponytail, but not often.
I guess you can't cut the hair because we can't cut these actors' hair rather. But we also have to come back to like status quo after they flip the switch back on. So a haircut is out of the question. Which is a shame because that's the thing you do.
Although when Elena flipped her switch, she kept the pink streak.
She did, yeah. Which...
I don't know why you hate that streak so much. Do you hate fun?
It looks so stupid, and it's just the one streak. I think that's what it is. It's because it's just one. You didn't even get, like, highlights. You just got one stupid little streak, and it's not even a nice color. I don't like it.
You don't like magenta?
I don't like magenta. I think it's a goofy color. There's a character called Magenta in The Flash who had magenta hair, and I thought it was stupid. But that was her name. So I was like, this makes sense. So Stefan and Caroline are at the bar at Whitmore. They're cracking jokes, they're taking shots, and she tells him he should smile more. He's hot. My worst nightmare is that this relationship is going to progress in a way they probably wouldn't want it to yet, while the humanity is off. Oh, I hate it. She does clock that Stefan's here babysitting her because he doesn't think she can do this like responsible no humanity thing she's planning, plus he feels guilty. And he says, you're right. And when I came by to apologize for the conversation we had on the day of your mom's funeral, you were gone. So I couldn't tell you how I really felt. And Caroline's like, and now I don't care. So no harm, no foul. Then Stefan tries to confess his feelings, and Caroline's like, wow, it only took a couple years and cancer to devour my mother and me flipping my humanity switch for you to say that, so this is fun. She starts getting pissed, and Stefan is doing the Stefan thing. He's trying to assure her that he can help her through this, and he can get her back, and he reaches out and touches her face, and it almost works. But then she locks in again. Everyone's locking in this season, and she's like, you shouldn't have done that. This is, of course, when she kidnaps Sarah Salvatore and compels Liam Med School to do surgery on her. There's that quote. What is that quote? I didn't write it down because Elena is going to be like, I've been where you are, Caroline. You don't want to do this.
Oh, she clocks her good. Damn. I think you said it in the Elena episode, but I can't remember it now.
I think she says, I've compelled this med student, Liam, to perform surgery on Sarah Salvatore, who is Stefan's niece, and you still found a way to make it about you. God, Elena, you must have a gift. So good.
That's one of my favorite things about these no humanity eras. It makes everyone so rude, and they just, whatever criticism you could make about a character, that's when they, your Priyanka, they become your Priyanka from Brown.
Don't expose me like that. They don't know about my past. Now the listeners are gonna ask, who's Priyanka? Oh no! Although it would actually be very tangentially related to the theme of this podcast, so we'll keep an eye open on that. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun when they get to cut loose and say some shit that sometimes are hard home truths that characters need to hear. But Stefan is like, all right, I'll do whatever you want, Caroline. Just let my poor niece go. And Caroline says, great. You're the only person who could bring me back to humanity, so I need you to flip your switch. At this point, Elena has run off to try and find Sarah Salvatore, but there's not enough time for her to check all the rooms at that med school. So Stefan agrees and flips his switch off. And so now both Stefan and Caroline, arguably the best of this group, are off the rails. Stefan, who does not have Caroline's control when he does not have his humanity, starts dropping bodies immediately. And his whole deal now is to try and force Caroline to let go because she's being very prim and proper about her no humanity, feeding situation. So I think he kills her choir director.
Oh, is that after she sings I'm Still Hurting?
Yes, she sings I'm Still Hurting. And she's like, well, any sort of criticism, and then the choir director's head rolls off his body, and it's like, oh. All right.
And honestly, Caroline, you brought this on yourself, because why did you think having Ripper Stefan around was going to slot into your neatly devised plans?
For as much as she purports to be so well organized in her no humanity era, this was short-sighted. You know he's a Ripper. I guess because she doesn't care about him, she's not thinking about that immediately. She's just trying to fix the immediate problem, which is the whole problem of the humanity switch flip, is that it is a short-term solution. So in revenge, she breaks his bike, because Stefan's been in his bike era since season 4. And Stefan's like, you literally just unbolted the bike. I could put this back together. Girl, you're not even trying. Eventually, he does succeed in getting her over the edge. And then the two of them start Bonnie and Clyding through Whitmore. They're feeding, killing, hooking up, being a general menace. It is such a nightmare.
Is that their first time?
It is their first time, which is so awful.
Awkward.
It's so bad. I don't think we ever see any explicit indication that they've slept together, but it's implied. At some point, Tyler and Matt come upon them, and they get trapped in this psychological and physical torture fest at the hands of Caroline and Stefan. Caroline is making them answer questions about her since they both dated her, which I thought was kind of
that.
funny.
In a room with 3 of your love interests. Invite Klaus over, make it a real party.
But there's no threat to Klaus. She can't do anything to him, so it's not as fun.
She can threaten to murder his boyfriend, Stefan.
That's true. And we know he can't have that, no matter how much he doth protest.
Honestly, I'm surprised Klaus didn't turn up. This is his dream throuple. Caroline and Stefan together.
Right? They're both off the rails, his favorite state of being for a love interest. Where are you, buddy? Clearly you weren't in it for real. Both Tyler and Matt get a question right, and she's like, very good, very good. One of them was, what's her favorite color? And Matt says, that's a trick question. You don't have a favorite color. You like all of them.
I know
Something
she asked when her birthday was.
That was to Tyler, which he gets correct.
Which I'm like, well, obviously, he dated you the longest. I know the show is trying to pretend this never happened, but I ain't forget.
Then her third question is what her mom's final memory was, which they weren't even in the room for, let alone in her mind.
No one else was in the room when it happened.
So she's like, oh, well, guess you have to die now because you couldn't answer that. And then she flips a coin to see who she's gonna kill first. At some point, Tyler breaks something wooden to like defend himself, and then they trick Tyler into stabbing Matt. Someone runs out of the way. So now Tyler's got.
Is this the scene where she's like, see that vein throbbing in his forehead? Yes! I used to think it was so sexy. Now I realize it's just the blood rushing out of his brain. This is why I love No Humanity Era for my girls. They're hilarious. And I'm like, you know what? That vein is prominent. And yes, I also used to think it was quite sexy. There's a scene when he crosses over to the originals when he kidnaps Haley and he's making the hybrid eyes while walking menacingly with her like slung over his shoulder. And that vein is showing again. And I think he pops the hybrid teeth as well. And I was like, Tyler Lockwood. Oh my.
I am about 76% sure I tweeted about it and gave it a name, but I can't remember. So the vein is very important for all of us present, as it turns out.
And I'm like, Caroline, you used to like when the blood would leave his brain, so let's not act brand new here. Like y'all two weren't doing the horizontal bamboo all over Mystic Falls.
Now Matt's gonna die and Tyler's gonna turn into a werewolf again. And she's like, let's do the math. And it's like, oh God. Then Damon comes in with Lily Salvatore, who's fresh out of a prison world. And they're like, we're gonna get Stefan's humanity back on. And Caroline's like, oh, well, that's not good for me, so I'm out. Bye. Stabs Stefan in the back and says, thanks for the head start. Vampire icon. I cannot pretend she's not incredibly iconic in this era. When we next see them together, we know Stefan has his humanity back on now. But Caroline doesn't know that, so he uses that to lure her into a bedroom, then vervains both of them and pretends that they got caught by the rest of the Mystic Falls gang. Elena comes by to give Caroline a letter that her mother left behind as a bid to like bring her back to humanity. And Caroline's like, why would I care about that? Stefan burned that. And Stefan's like, but what if after you feel bad about it and regret burning it? And she's like, what are the words coming out of your mouth right now? What? And so Stefan is forced to burn the letter. She's also still anti-Delena when her switch is off, so that's nice.
Ooh, love that for her.
She drags them for pretending that they can have a future together, where Elena's a doctor and they have kids, because that's the shit that she and Damon have been talking about lately. Because Joe's pregnant, so Elena's like, my biological children I can never have again. And Caroline's like, this is embarrassing. She also keeps trying to initiate with Stefan, who's like, not like this. And that's when she realizes that his humanity is back on. She's like, oh, what's wrong? You don't want to take advantage of little old me? And I almost threw up and threw my laptop. So she stabs his neck and she kicks down the door and she leaves. Later we see she's speeding down a road in her car. A cop car flashes its lights and she's like, thank God, snack time. But when the cop comes to her window, it's her mom.
I was gagged. I was like, oh.
Two possible scenarios happening. Liz is somehow alive again, or this is a mental dream.
I immediately assumed it was a mental dream, but I was like, I didn't realize that's where we were going. So I meant gagged in the sense that, oh, we're stuck in your head right now, and you thought you were about to get a snack. Mind you, your mom is here to
chastise
pull some
you.
Psychological strings.
She's holding out a gun and a flashlight, which is par for the course for an American cop at a traffic stop. But
oh no.
But then she explains, no, Caroline, you're under arrest for the murders of insert name 1, insert name 2, which I think are people that Caroline's killed while her humanity was off. She's like, Mom, no, it's me, Caroline. And Liz is like, I'm afraid you're mistaken. My daughter's kind, compassionate, helps those in need. And then Caroline's like, oh, Stefan, what are you doing? This isn't gonna work. She realizes Stefan's hijacking her mind, and she actually has not left the room that they're in at all. He tries to calm her down when she wakes up in the real world and to help her, but she grabs a piece of the blinds behind her and breaks it off and stabs him in the chest. As she's trying to kill him, Stefan reaches out and grabs her and shows her a vision of her mother talking to him. And he tells her this is a real memory. Liz is telling Stefan, oh, you're such a good friend to Caroline. I hope someday you can be more than that with her. Because again, Liz is like, I'm dying. I can be blunt. I need y'all two to get together. I need to know there are grandbabies in my future, even though you're vampires. Stefan's like, the timing isn't great right now, what with you dying and all. I want our start to be perfect. Liz then tells Stefan that he might be waiting a long while then. And Stefan says, I'm a patient guy, which I thought was so... And the thing about this, memory is that this happens prior to the funeral, obviously, of Liz Forbes when Caroline asks her that, which assures you, without a doubt, Stefan has been very into Caroline since before that and was genuinely just like, girl, we can't talk about this today on the day of her funeral. Stefan then sees the letter lying on the table, the same letter that Elena brought earlier for Caroline. And Liz is like, I'm still working on it. I need to figure out what to say. Caroline then pulls the stake out of Stefan's chest and is like, I need to see the rest. But the rest of the memory is Caroline's mom leaving the house, and Caroline in her mind slams on the door calling out to her mother saying, I want to read the letter, please come back. And Stefan tells her, I can't make her come back. Also, I gave you the letter, girl, and you burned it. So she's like, what do you think it said? Stefan's like, whatever it was, it's gone now. And that's when everything starts rushing back in for Caroline. And she starts to break down and sob over her mother. And she's like, oh God, what have I done? So the no humanity era ends. Fun while it lasted.
Yeah, it was very quick, but it was fun. I'm glad that Tyler had not yet left the show when this was going on, because it wouldn't have been the same without him being there. She gets to drag her exes for filth when they've done nothing wrong. She gets to clog Elena and Damon again.
Which is always fun. And it's not ideal, but there is something about, again, like I said earlier, the suppression of inhibition that happens while they're in the no humanity era that allows them to take a step a bit quicker that they might not have taken before that. But also at the same time, it kind of messes them up in a way where now that they're coming down from that, it's like, I can't actually look at you for another 3 months, so I need to go.
Which is another obstacle. You asked for obstacles.
It's rough, man. It's rough this whole season.
They're giving you what you wanted.
I didn't want multiple obstacles. I just wanted a real normal obstacle that wasn't artificial and out of character. This is a whole season of them struggling. It sucks. But you know what? I trust in them. They'll make it through. She skips an episode and then she comes back in the final 2 episodes, which is a shame because it's the Bachelor, Bachelorette, and I would have loved to see her in that context.
Oh, when she's in her no humanity era, is this when she sings "Hit Me with Your Best Shot" and someone's like, "Hey, Taylor Swift"?
Yes, it is. Some girly who's like, "I'm trying to study, get off the stage." And she's like, is there a manager here? And Stefan comes along and is like, did someone ask for a manager? So presumably that girl died.
I just found that hilarious. Calling her Taylor Swift, I was like, actually though, the energy, the energy and the aesthetic, it's very much Miss Blondie.
She's in her Reputation era right now. She's in her Midnights, draw the cat eye sharp enough to kill a man. No body, no crime, am I right?
Oh.
Anyway, she does come back to organize Joe and Rick's wedding, though, because who else is going to do that shit?
Alaric doesn't have any adult friends, and Joe apparently has no friends at all.
Exclusively college first and second years in their wedding party. It's embarrassing for them. But here we are.
So embarrassed.
How do you look your family in the eye when they come to attend your wedding and look at the bridal train and see children? I don't know what to tell you. How do they look at your man with respect when these frat boys are standing behind him, who were his high school students?
I mean, at least Damon is like the best man, and Damon's supposed to be like physically 25, but...
Yeah, Papa Parker does not like Damon, so I don't think she's impressed. She does the apology tour that you have to do when you flipped off your switch. This is when she has that single conversation with Tyler, because I don't count the no humanity stuff. That's a mess, and it largely wasn't about Tyler. It was just about Menace. She apologizes for trying to kill him, and he's like, "It's funny, we moved on a while ago, but being tortured by your ex and her new boyfriend is never good for the ego." I chuckled at that. That was funny. Caroline's like, "He's not my boyfriend." But she does later give him advice about some trouble he's having with Liv. And Tyler's like, "Girl, and your Stefan drama? Please, come on. Don't step to me." And then he walks off. And I think that's the last time they speak in season 6.
Tyler and Liv. Speaking of ships I don't support, but anyway.
I don't mind them. I like them. She tries to avoid Stefan at the wedding, but he does eventually catch up to her. He's been trying to convince Damon that taking the cure for vampirism is a bad idea, so he wants to talk to her about that. And then they shift to the no humanity drama that happened. She starts listing all the stuff she's done since she fell for Stefan and is saying that, like, this thing has made me crazy. And the old Caroline would have smacked me if she saw what I've been up to lately because of a boy. And I was like, I don't think that's true. If anything, old Caroline was far more boy crazy. But, you know, I guess I get what you're saying. Stefan tells her it's because she's a control freak who's lost control. And he feels the same way when he's around her. Falling for someone is being vulnerable. It's giving up control. This is when Caroline says, because of everything that's happened in her life recently, control is all she has left, and she's not ready to give that up. Kai attacks the wedding and kills Joe. We know this. So the next we see these two is in a hospital when Elena is already under the Sleeping Beauty spell. She asks Stefan if he's going to be okay, and he's like, "Yeah, you?" And she says when Elena wakes up, she'll still be her best friend, but the two of them were soulmates, so she just wants to make sure he's going to be okay. Stefan says he doesn't think Elena necessarily came into his life to be his soulmate.
How dare you?
I don't think that's true.
How dare they?
This is gonna make less sense given the next thing he says. But I don't think that's true, and neither did the text before this, because Lexi says you can have more than one.
Exactly.
Is the thing she tells him at the end of their breakup. Stefan then does say, she was my soulmate, and I loved her more than I thought I could love anyone. So I'm like, what's that line about? I don't know.
I guess he meant to be my final soulmate? My end game?
Sure, say that then. It's a very weird thing to say. And then he asks Caroline if that's why she's been keeping away from him, if she's been worried that it's not comparable somehow to what he had with Elena. And Caroline's like, I can't do this right now, and leaves. Always exiting the conversation. Midway through the episode, she has her goodbye with Elena and Bonnie, and then she leaves them to have their moment because theoretically, Elena and Bonnie will never see each other again. And then, at the end of the episode, she and Stefan talk. He says, okay, you made a list of all the ways falling for me has kind of messed up your life. And you know what? That's fair. That's on me. But here's a list all of the ways loving you has changed my life. And it's like, oh shit, Stefan's gonna say some hella romantic shit. I can't do this. He says she was by his side when he needed a friend. She made him laugh. She made him dance. And she told him he would find love again. And he understands if she needs time to heal and to live life. And if he has to wait for her, he will. And when she's ready for him, he'll be ready for her. And then he leans in and kisses her on the cheek. And that's where we leave them for season 6. And the thing about this scene, which would be perfectly sweet on its own, is it's intercutting with Delena dancing on that retcon road to Ed Sheeran or some shit. I don't give a shit.
No, I've named what song it is. It's called Hunger or something, or I've Got a Hunger. It's by some other person I've never heard of outside of that song.
And it's just like, can we have a hot second to ourselves this season? Why does Delena have to be in every single thing?
Hunger by Ross Copperman. There we go. I must admit, it was a very sweet scene, and at the end of a season where it felt like everything else was falling apart, because I was like, okay, well, now I have to accept that Nina is leaving, so there'll probably be no time to ever put Elena back with Stefan. B, Alaric has again lost the love interest and his unborn children. This is so awful. C, Tyler's leaving the show, and seemingly for good. Now that he's become a werewolf and is interesting again.
Truly are just like, we couldn't think of a single thing to do with him.
So while everything else is falling apart, I'm like, you know what? This beautiful, devoted, romantic monologue from Stefan, it was a nice consolation, I guess. I was like, okay, there's hope for the future. It's not what I wanted, but...
As I've said, it is very much what I wanted at this point, and it is kind of frustrating that it's largely a season of obstacles for them, because they're not together at the end of the season. We still have to wait another couple months before we get to them maybe getting together. But at the very least, it's clear that they do, at least from Stefan's end, he does love Caroline, and from her end, she'd fallen for him a while back already. It's she fell first, he fell harder. Which is always great.
It had to feel earned. And also, what with Elena leaving the show, I guess the writers knew that this was now going to be their primary couple. Because, they had no idea who they were ever going to put Bonnie with yet.
Right. It's like, she was already with Jeremy, but we wrote him out the episode before she comes back. So what do we do now?
Yeah. So I guess they were like, it's got to be this uphill battle, because once we put them together, if we want to create more drama, now it needs to be drama within the relationship. And that doesn't happen in fiction. In fiction, once you find your person, it's happily ever after. There is no more work to be done.
God. But that's Caroline for season 6. Like I said, it's mostly Steroline stuff, and right in the middle, it's her mom dying, which is so tragic. But even that is also intertwined with some stuff to do with Stefan. So it's a better season than season 5, I feel.
By far. Very, Caroline-centric, as we've seen.
She's not very involved in the main plot, but to be honest, a lot of characters aren't very involved in the main plot at any given time.
Yeah. And even Elena, who was very often in the main plot, I was like,
oh yeah,
it's not about you. And I can see that's killing you.
Yeah. And that's why she steps into the B plot that Caroline's driving about her mom dying and is like, actually, it's about me, babes. Don't mind me. Let me do CPR on your dying mom and break her ribs, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Damon speaks at Liz's funeral. I find that so insufferable. I hate that he gets to speak at a funeral.
Canonically, they're still friends. I mean, they never had a falling out or like a drifting apart.
He gets to do the main speech. I forget what it's called. Is that the eulogy? He gets to eulogize Liz Forbes. Throw me off a building. I don't care.
Because he was the closest one to her apart from Caroline. At least, with people who are left alive.
Anyway, Caroline goes through a lot of emotional turmoil this season. Very rightfully within the scope of the text, flips her humanity switch, as everyone has done, rite of passage. Comes back the other side a little bit worse for wear, but also takes a moment to deal with her grief and her resultant catharsis. And also finds a little bit of romance. So that's nice.
With Stefan, who's also having his own mama drama this season. At least at a certain point. It'll carry over into season 7 and get even worse.
Yeah, it gets much worse.
Interesting that one of the sweetest, most, at least initially, innocent characters in the show, who's been getting put through the ringer as early as season 1.
Yeah.
It's truly, it's interesting to me that she was the last one with a parent left to lean on. And this is the season where it's like, nope, no more grown-ups to hold your hands. You guys are on your own now. Rick, the adult of the group, has been shattered by the end of this season as well. So even he
cannot be relied upon to take care of you guys.
It's almost like the final death of that lost parent is also a foreshadowing for the fact that, Elena's leaving the show. Let's see how you fare without the main character around which all your plots have centered for 5 seasons.
As it turns out, we make everything Damon-centric because he leads the show now. And he's the hero.
Unless you're in it for the romance, in which I guess the focus does shift to Steroline.
It's true, they become the lead romantic pairing. Well, unless you count Damon and Elena's body in a coffin.
I refuse to entertain that nonsense. Does she go back to college at any point? I guess she does because she's singing.
Yeah, she went back.
Okay.
Like episode 3, she decides to go back to Whitmore.
I guess she ends the season on a slightly better note than a lot of other characters, which isn't saying much, but at least it's like hope for the future, light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, who gets off well?
Matt.
But
only because Matt doesn't have anything to do. So nothing happens to him.
Nothing can be taken from him. Except for Elena, his best friend, who's going into a deep sleep and he'll probably never see again. But outside of that, he's doing fine. Peachy keen. His next season's about to be really bad.
Having nothing means you have nothing to lose.
So real. So true. Honestly, everyone's next season's about to get rough. Season 7 is a middle of the road season, but so much bad happens. And so much happens for Caroline that we're gonna have to get into. We're finally here.
Do you see how actually Tyler was this buffer that was protecting me from all the weird stuff that was coming Caroline's way?
This is the other thing too, is that for all the hardships Steroline has to face this season before they even get together, it's about to get worse for them. They suffer so endlessly and it frustrates me.
Oof, the ick.
It's so bad. But we're finally going to have to discuss that situation from Caroline's perspective, so maybe we'll have a bit more to say.
Yeah.
But until then, thank you for listening and thank you for following us into the new year. We hope you've had a well and restful break. We hope everything goes well for you and all of us in this, the year of our Lord 2025. If you have any questions, queries, or just want to say hi, you can send those to animalattackpod@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at animattackpod. That's at ANIM attack pod. You'll find a link tree in our bio that has all our online stuff. Like last year in the new year, I'm gonna say a challenge to you, listener. Find somebody who at some point has watched the show, or you know what, find somebody who hasn't, because as it turns out, people will listen to a podcast knowing nothing about the text. Maybe that's because they're our IRL friends, but who knows. Share this with somebody. Say you listen to a podcast that's about the Vampire Diaries and supernatural drama in general. Yes, every episode is like 3.5 hours long, but if you're working and you need something in the background, or you've got a long trip, just throw us on. It's a fun time. This is the year we grow. Just like last year was the year we grow. We're constantly growing. This is a capitalist society, and by God, we will stick to its principles. I'm rambling now. Anyways, thanks for listening. Cheers until next time. Bye.
Bye.